Thank you. It is June 8th, 2021. It is 7:02 p.m. and we are at our regular city council meeting this evening. This meeting is being held in person. I just wanted to state quickly that per City Hall policy, now masks are not required for vaccinated individuals, but of course masks are encouraged as you choose your own adventure. But it is nice to see all of us together in the hall. It's quite nice. And we have set up the chambers so that we do still have physical distancing as we're moving into what is our new normal. So I'll call this meeting to order. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Oh, feels good. It's been a while. We're in section 3 of our agenda, citizens to be heard. We do have a public hearing this evening as well. If you would like to be heard as a citizen tonight for a general comment, we do ask that you fill out the yellow form and hand it to Summer. At this time, I don't have any yellow forms. We will be moving on to the public hearing, and that, oh, I'm sorry, public hearing is yellow. Citizens to be heard is purple. So. We have two, and one for general, but you do not have to speak at the public hearing. You can speak in general as well. So we're going to start off with citizens to be heard. And Summer, just real quickly, we are still accepting comments digitally so that we can be fully accessible. And how many forms have we received?
One from Lacey Shumway and one from Randall Fox.
Thank you so much. Okay, so Randall Fox, welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We do have wipes if you want to wipe down any of your area.
Okay. Since I'm the first one, I'm
Thanks.
probably going to be okay.
All right then. Welcome to our chambers. Thanks for coming tonight.
It's great to see all of you in person. I've watched you on the screen, and this is unique. If you read all of the comments that come in, you've seen that I've written over several meetings about e-bike access. I've been working with both the Motorized Trails Committee and Trail Mix to get e-bike access. So I'm not going to bore you with all the stuff that I've written over the last couple months. I thought I would talk quickly about my personal reason for wanting e-bikes. When I was 6 years old, I contracted Guillain-Barré syndrome, sometimes called French polio. I had it bad. I was in hospital for 10 weeks, a lot of it in intensive care and even in isolation for a while, and 3 months of outpatient physical therapy. I wore Forrest Gump type leg braces from grade school all the way to high school, and in high school I had a couple of major surgeries, one each summer on one leg or the other, Frankensteinian type surgeries with joint stabilization, muscle elongation, and muscle transplants. So I went through a lot. I had a good friend in high school who was a bicycle racer. This was 1974. He convinced me that I should consider cool Italian racing bikes, which is pretty much all there was back then, as a means of gaining my strength back, and I soon realized that it was going to be my ticket to a quasi-normal life. I started out working at a bike shop to pay for college. I didn't get any kind of scholarships, but I quickly realized that that was a passion, and it became my vocation. I spent 45 years in the bicycle industry. I've done pretty much anything you can think of in bicycles, from coaching to wind tunnel testing and everything in between. That allowed me to move around a lot. I had enough expertise that I was able to live a lot of different places. So I've lived in 9 different states, 16 different cities. and I ended up in Moab. All along the while, I fought for bicycle rights, cyclist rights. In the 70s and 80s, road cyclists were not looked upon favorably by a lot of drivers, so we kind of fought those wars in the 80s and 90s. I was part of the hiker versus biker mountain bike fights, and now today it's e-bikes. So I've been doing this for a while. I'm going to be 66 very soon, and the Guillain-Barré race seems to have caused permanent neurological degradation. I've lost a lot of my hearing, even though I gave up music decades ago. And it's forced me to live a disciplined life, which involves swimming and lifting weights and riding my bike whenever possible. And there's a lot like me in my opportunity to serve as an advocate for e-bikes. I have heard from so many seniors that are in similar situations, or they're just looking to maintain the quality of their life, but we just don't have the oomph any longer. So we need a little bit of help. I'm asking the council to vote in a positive measure for the e-bike access on paved paths. I realize that mountain bike trails are totally different avenue, and that doesn't apply here. There is one good, quiet, safe ride of any kind of distance, and that's the 191 trail north out of town. And I need it for myself, and I hope that the council sees fit to make it happen for all of us that need a little bit of help.
Thank you, Randall. Thank you for your comments and for your storytelling tonight.
Thanks.
Okay, Howard, I have you as a citizen to be heard, but we do, Howard, I have you as a citizen to be heard for a public hearing. Okay. Would anyone else like to speak this evening as a citizen to be heard? If not, we can go ahead and move on to our public hearing. And everyone, Nora Shepard is our planning director, and I've invited her to give a brief presentation on the item that is on our agenda for our public hearing. Is there a motion to open public hearing?
So moved.
Thank you, Kaylin. Is there a second?
I will second.
Thank you, Mike. All those in favor?
Aye.
Karen? She might be watching on YouTube, and there may be a delay. So I am going to say 4 ayes and 1 abstain. Until she pops in and says aye to open the public hearing, which is 4-1. I'm just going to drag out a little bit.
Yes, you could read the actual.
Proposed Resolution 13, 2021, approving the final. Thank you, Karen. Approving the final master plan development, the MPD, and Phase 1 plat for the Linesback development located and accessed from Sand Flats Road. Nora.
Okay, I do have a presentation.
Thank you.
And there's a lot of text, and I apologize for that, but this is just one of those things that there are a lot of sort of factoids that, you know, I needed to kind of put down. So I'm going to give some background and then talk about what is currently being proposed. So basics is the location of this, which is up on the screen right now, is off of Sand Flats Road. It's on both sides. It's about 175 acres. The proposal is about 73% open space, and the applicant is John Dwight with the Moab Land Company, who's sitting back here. And the approximate commercial footprint is just over 50,000 square feet, and the approximate residential footprint is 365,000 square feet. Not that that means much without having it in context, but so this does have some history, and I think the history is important. because this has been around a long time. We've been talking about it for a long time. It has entitlements that have already been given. In certain ways, it's vested. And what we're here to talk about today is how they plan to move forward with those original entitlements. So in the early 2000s, SITLA School Institution Trust Lands Administration entered into an agreement with LB Moab, who is the current developer that we've been working with. Originally, the project was outside of the city limits, so annexation was necessary. And we also, when we were considering annexation, we didn't have a zone that really fit it. So the SAR, which is Sensitive Area Resort Zone, was created. So when it was annexed, that was the zoning that was applied to the parcel. In 2007, 2008, LB Moab removed campground facilities, cleaned up the site, took a bunch of junk off the site, and got rid of some of the illegal camping that was happening out there and probably not terribly healthy. So they removed and cleaned up the site significantly. There had been a lot of discussion ongoing through the late 2000s, and October 30th, 2008, a pre-annexation agreement was approved, and shortly thereafter, the annexation petition was approved. So it was annexed with the SAR zone, and with that came a review and approval of a preliminary master plan development. And then a little bit later, in September 2009, there was review and approval of the development and phasing agreement. So the development and phasing agreement and the pre-annexation agreement are the two guiding documents, along with the SAR zone. But there was a specific, the development and phasing agreement is really a development agreement, as we would call it today. And those remain valid and in effect. So a little bit more happened after that. After a preliminary master plan development and annexation were approved, there was a lawsuit. The city and developer prevailed. Then in 2016, the developer came in and requested a modification to change the configuration of a hotel from 53-bedroom suites to a 150-room hotel based upon their market research. After quite a bit of deliberation, the city determined that the modification was minor and that it did not require approval by the Planning Commission or the City Council. So it was approved, and then we were sued again. And this time the judge determined that we incorrectly approved the modification as a minor modification without public process. So that meant that everything that was done in 2016 went away. So that led us back to where we are today, which is that the 2008-2009 agreements represent the approved projects and the preliminary MPD. And since then, we've been talking, since the last few years anyway, since I got here, we've been talking with the developer about moving forward on it, at least some part of the project. There have been a number of discussions, and then they filed an application we determined that what was left to happen was a final master plan development. They'd received preliminary approval, and that each phase, and this is according to the development agreements, had to come in for final plat approval for the subdivision itself, and that a special improvements agreement would be done for each of the phases. So right now we're looking at phase one, a portion of the original phase one, and the improvements that go along with that. They have chosen, the hotel was originally part of phase one. They have chosen not to move forward with that at this time. So what they're looking at now for the first phase is 34 casita units. And this, what I've put on the screen now is just all the maximum. This is the total approved density that was in the preliminary master plan development that was approved. And it includes 18 employee housing units. Originally, and this is one of Kaylin's questions, originally in the pre-annexation agreement, there was talk about a RETA, or a real estate transfer assessment. And by the time we did the development and phasing agreement, we were pretty convinced that we couldn't do that in the state of Utah. So that was eliminated, and then we decided there was a decision that 18 employee housing units would be built in the 5th phase, and that's what the development agreement says. In the phasing, there was also, these are other approved uses that will eventually be part of the master plan. So phasing, the project continues to be, looks like 5 phases. The applicant in the development agreement, development and phasing agreement, is quite clear that they have the ability to modify different things in different phases. So they have chosen to do that at this time by only moving forward with part of phase 1 now. They don't know when the hotel piece will come in, but it's likely that they will move just to more casitas as it moves forward, and at some point they'll come in with that hotel piece, but we are not discussing that at this time. Other projects improvements that were required back in 2008, 2009, which are continue to be required, include improvements to Sand Flats Road. I'll talk about that a little bit. Utilities, and if you've been up there lately for the last quite a while, you've seen utility construction. They are building water and sewer to city standards, which was not part of the original agreement, but they have upgraded those. And now they have built them to city standards, and the city will actually be owners of the water and sewer infrastructure through a lot of work with Chuck Williams, our city engineer. Other kinds of utilities as well. There was a drinking water source protection plan that was specifically approved, and this is because there's some concern about drinking water source of Shackle Springs. Skakel Springs. And so there is that drinking water source protection plan. The improvements that have done to date are compliant with that, and all the subdivision improvements are required to be as well. And then they have, at least for the first phase, they have landscaping and irrigation plans, but they're required for each phase to present those in some detail. So the final master plan development is consistent with the 2008 and 2009 development agreements, the pre-annexation and the development phasing agreement, and also with the master plan development approval. There are some updated utility plans, as I mentioned, because they've agreed to build to city standards. There are some upgraded Sand Flats Road improvements. I mean, this was all agreed to a long time ago, and things change, standards change, and the applicant has come to the table being willing to upgrade a number of the way we do things to be consistent with today's improvement requirements. Sand Flats Road, there had been a little bit of question about that. The development phasing agreement required increased non-paved shoulders on Sand Flats Road. I think it's 8 feet on one side and 4 feet on the other. And upon further review, the city engineer and the project developer and engineers, along with input from the county streets person, Bill
Jackson.
decided, Bill, what's his name?
Jackson.
Worked with Chuck and decided that today, looking at it today, what they felt was appropriate was a paved surface going uphill. And the applicant has offered to do a multi-use path, which is separated from the road for the downhill bicycle and pedestrians. So rather than having a little bit bigger non-paved section, we now have a paved section and an actual separated bike pedestrian path on the other side of the road. There are also requirements for modifications to one curve on Sand Flats Road, slightly revised from the original approval, but again, the city engineer, Chuck, went out there and looked at it, and they have agreed to do what the city engineer has recommended in terms of dealing with that curve. There's also been an agreement because of the changes in phases, that a portion of the Hell's Revenge can suffice as a temporary emergency access for the first phase. And there are other commitments about Hell's Revenge as well as it moved forward. They're working with the off-road vehicle folks to kind of realign it, and they're working together to do that. Eventually, it will also serve as an access to the water tank that's up there, that's being, that serves this development. But it will still be used primarily as OHV. So the Phase 1 plat, which is
Can I just ask how much longer?
Not very much.
Okay.
The Phase 1 plat consists of the 34 casita units, which are consistent with the regional MPD, private internal roads, which are going to be maintained by the developer or the property owners association, open space dedication with restrictions and consistent with the agreements, shoulder and multi-purpose trail construction. No, we're not going to have a train, sorry.
Bummer.
Stormwater management, there's been a lot of time spent on stormwater management and then the drinking water source protection. And we do have quite detailed plans on revegetation in disturbed areas in Phase 1 and native landscaping around the casitas. There is also a subdivision improvements agreement that has been agreed to between the applicant and the city as of a few days ago. And that was a long negotiation with their legal counsel, ours, the city engineer. And it covers the first phase. Every phase will have one. And the city council will be required to approve the final plat and the SIA for every subsequent phase. So this is a little drawing that shows generally where the casitas will be. And then this is the subdivision layout. Later in the meeting, John Dwight, who represents LB Moab, will be showing you some renderings that they sort of have fairly hot off the press, so I did not include them in this presentation. Neither the final plat nor the final MPD necessarily requires a public hearing, but we wanted this process to be as public-facing as possible. And so they agreed to a public hearing before the Planning Commission and the City Council. The Planning Commission held a public hearing. They had a couple written comments. There were no verbal comments, and they forwarded a positive recommendation to the City Council with one member voting against and the balance voting in favor. So this is just a conclusion. It's been approved, it's vested, and it was in 2008, 2009. There are some modifications updating, particularly utility and improvements that were agreed to by the applicant. And the drinking water source protection plan continues to be in place and enforced. That's it.
Thank you, Nora. I think it's really helpful to have the historical context as we move into the public hearing, and as we'll have later on our agenda, deliberation and action for this item. So thank you so much. We're going to move right into the public hearing. So, and we've got some, yep. And you might want to.
Want me to stay?
Nope. I want you to actually vacate with all things. Go with you, because we'll have public hearing, and then as we move on. Oh, thank you. Thanks, Mom. Thanks for cleaning up.
Once a mom, also always a mom.
Yeah.
You go over to my house after the meeting?
That's inappropriate. So we will move into public hearing, our public hearing as it is open. And our first, Nora, do you want to grab your stuff too? Just.
Like my computer?
Yeah, because I don't think, do we
that's
want to
fine.
keep this up during, I don't think so.
No need.
And then on the YouTube world, we'll just have
Okay.
the regular chambers. Thank you. Howard Trenhold. Welcome, good to see you.
Privilege and honor to be in the presence of people
Hi, people.
in the flesh. My name's Howard Trenholm. I am a 25-year business owner in Moab, and wow, what a project. When it first came on board, I mean, to be honest, I wasn't exactly thrilled, but then I wasn't thrilled about any kind of development. But over the 20 years it's almost taken to bring this thing into fruition, I also understand the role of SITLA and other components to this. I believe the developer's gone above and beyond what is required. When seeing the plans, I was blown away. It's fantastic. They're really doing a great job, and it's going to enhance. As a city, the revenue potential from this source might pad your tax revenues for some time, and it's worth considering that when you're considering property taxes, although that wouldn't be a bad take on property tax up there. I'm just in full support of it. I think the clientele that it will bring in is the clientele that Moab is gearing towards, the high spender, the people that are going to be here a while, the people that might commit to this community instead of being fly-by visitors. And those are the kinds of visitors we need. And I hope that the City Council approves this project.
Thank you, Howard. Billy Snyder. Hey, Billy. Welcome.
Hey, thanks. My name is Billy Snyder. I just wanted to speak tonight as positively as I could about the development. I actually am a new real estate agent in town. I only got into this business because of Mike Badger. He is an amazing person, and I really think he has carried this development to where it needs to be. He has obviously vetted himself in the community with his other businesses, and also is a veteran who has done amazing things both in service and in retirement. I definitely think he deserves to be recognized for his efforts, and we're lucky to have an ethical person doing the development. And I really think that he's doing the ultimate dump refurbishment or whatever you want to term it, refurb for the whole town. We're very lucky to take really the worst part of town and turn it into the best part of town is what I think he's proposing here. And I think it could really improve our view shed instead of harm it, which I think a lot of the locals are worried about pushing the boundaries of the community out. And I think he's creating an opportunity here. And for balanced use, that has obviously been a moto-driven place, and also bicycles. And I think it's good to get some other use up in that area. And I think he's got when they have an opportunity for a great steward for the area. And I think a lot of locals were a little emotional at first, and I hope everyone's open-minded to thinking that this is a good project, because I definitely do. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all I got.
Thanks, Billy. Thanks for your comments. Courtney Kaiser. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. I am here today in my capacity as a citizen. And I think we can all agree that the cat's out of the bag. Moab's a pretty great place to be, and we can't stop people from coming here. But what we can control is what type of experience those tourists have when they come, and to some degree, how their tax dollars could help our community. The project proposed at Lions Back not only brings a different and higher-end clientele into the fold, but it would also resultantly bring a higher bang for the density tax income to the city. Those dollars can then provide more housing and more opportunities for economic development to our permanent residents. This project also has the potential to bring repeat long-term visitors who will not only invest financially, but emotionally in Moab. A topic that's monumentally important to me as an individual is design. There have been many large-scale projects recently that I do not feel speak to the vernacular of our region. The architecture proposed at Lions Back has a classy, timeless aesthetic that is reflective of the landscape and shows a marked attention to the human scale. This type of project could help direct designs of future development here in a more positive direction. For all these important reasons, tourist diversification, intentional tax base, and high-quality design, I think this is a project well worth approving. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Would anyone else like to speak during this public hearing? Joe Kingsley did not fill out a form, but if you'd like to come on up, you better say who you are at the microphone, and Summer's gonna fuss around, try to get you a form to fill it out. Welcome.
Thank you. Joe Kingsley. And I'm here to request that you read my email that I sent about a month ago, and rather than repeat it, I just wanted part of this public hearing of why I think this is such an important, positive project for the city and the county and the local citizenry. I live on 300 South, and I can tell you, I already think I hear less noise because of it. And so I think it's a win-win in every possible direction. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Joe. Maybe stop by Summer's office over there and fill out a form. Is he all good? Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved?
Thank you, Kaylin.
Second.
Thank you, Tani. All those in favor?
Aye.
Karen? Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Thank you. And we will move on to administrative reports of our meeting. That's section 5 of our agenda. Carly?
Yes, good evening. Okay, we have a couple of exciting announcements. First off, I want to give a COVID update. So as you can tell, there are people who are unmasked in here. We've changed the city's masking requirements. So if you are vaccinated, masks are optional but encouraged. But if you are still unvaccinated, we ask that you still wear a mask while in City Hall. We've also changed the City Hall visiting hours. Before last week, it was by appointment only, but now the doors are open to the general public. So come on down. We're back to normal.
Normal.
Yes, a new normal. One other thing that I wanted to discuss is that over the past couple weeks, the city has moved to a different billing and financial software, and that transition has not been without some hiccups. So we have some billing issues that have happened and that our treasurer's office is dealing with. And I just wanted to give a quick rundown of the issues so people know to look out for them and that they can call the treasurer's office if they have questions. So there's a little bit of a list here, so bear with me. So past due notices mailed in June may reflect incorrect amounts due because the most recent billing amount was added to the past due amount. In other words, if you get a past due notice from June, give our treasurer's office a call because there might be a mistake, and they are happy to work with you. The account numbers for every single customer have been changed to fit the new billing software format. So customers who pay in person, by bank, bill pay, or by mail will need to include their new billing information. So be aware of that. But if you're doing express bill pay, your account number was automatically updated, so don't worry about it. If you have monthly payments set up through automatic express bill pay, you were not affected. So that still is the most convenient way to pay if you're interested. Bills were not sent out this month until June 2nd and should arrive in mailboxes soon. So if you haven't gotten your bill, it's coming. The new bills now use pink and blue ink on white postcards, so keep an eye out for them. It is meant to help you identify your bill when it arrives. And paperless billing customers will receive a printed statement in the mail this month, but paperless billing will resume in July. So you accidentally got a bill even though you were paperless, and that should just happen once. So we're trying to resolve these problems. If you have questions, you're welcome to call the treasurer's office. And I think I covered those issues. Any questions that you've heard about that issue that we should be aware of?
So for people who are on express bill pay, even though they will receive,
A paper bill?
a paper bill, do they need to do anything?
No, they should not be affected by that. So, and all of this information is also on our website, social media accounts, and you can engage with our city staff on like Facebook and stuff if you have questions too. That's another route to go. So. Thank you. That's all I have.
That's it?
Yep.
Thanks.
Okay, so
Thanks.
Carly, I
Yeah.
use Express Pay. There's
Yes.
no additional charges that are assessed, I think?
No,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
And thanks to our treasurer's office.
Yes.
Switching software is always hard. There's always going to be a hiccup. And so sending out bills this month was the hiccup,
It was a little hiccup.
the extra cards. Okay, 5.2, sustainability update. Hi, Mila.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you. I do have a little presentation as well. Let me get the dongle going.
I think you might have been
think you
unplugged, and I'm not
unplugged
sure if that
something.
matters.
I think that's Nora's.
Oh, Nora's plug.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay. We're almost there. Yay. All right. Where's my presentation thing? Maybe not. There we go. Okay. So I just made a really short presentation to take you through generally what I've been working on since I started. It hasn't been a whole lot of time, so I've been doing a lot of talking to people and, you know, getting a good idea of our priorities. So the first 4 things that I have been doing is our water conservation plan update. The state wants the first draft by July 15th. So that's coming up pretty soon. We're working hard on getting all of our data together with engineering and then working with the water board on the conservation plan ideas. The community renewable energy HB 411 process is moving right along. We are going to have our first board meeting, I think also in mid-July.
Hold on just one sec. Will you
Yeah.
bring the microphone a little closer, and then do you want to adjust the volume? There's just the feedback thing happening. It's all good? Okay.
Is that better?
She's going now. Yeah, okay. Go
Okay,
ahead.
sorry.
No worries.
So the first meeting for that process is going to be in mid-July. Keep an eye out for that. I think it will be a virtual meeting as well. And then after that, we will be able to start hiring the consultant and moving forward with some of the more technical work that's to come. The Sustainability Action Plan is coming next, and I've got a lot of ideas for that. I have another slide at the end where we could talk about that a little bit more. And then the Dark Skies work is in process. As you're all aware, we're due in 2024 to be in compliance. So I'm working to figure out how we're going to get city facilities in compliance. Rocky Mountain Power is coming back to us with a new estimate for replacing our streetlights. Apparently it's gotten much cheaper than it was the last time it went around, so I'm looking forward to seeing that. And then we are working on outreach for the community to try to get that process going before it's really time. Other projects, I'm coordinating with city departments, trying to figure out needs and opportunities. I've been meeting with whoever I can pretty much, but definitely talking a lot with Levi. And then I'm really excited for the new Parks Director to start. We do have a small fund for some shade trees, and we've got some ideas about how to work with the new USU Extension people to put in some water-wise landscaping, maybe demonstration gardens on city properties as we work towards our landscape ordinances. We're looking for all kinds of funding opportunities. There are some good ones out there for recycling bins and infrastructure. We're working with Evan on some of that too over at the Solid Waste District. There's a really interesting grant for compost that we're looking into, and then some technical assistance available for developing water ordinances. And we're always keeping our eyes out for more. GHG reporting is due, greenhouse gas emissions. So that will be happening here soon. And then general research, anybody's ideas, I'm always open. And then I'm doing a lot, as much outreach as I can with the community. We have a table at Market on Center. Sustainability may have a presence at some of the free concert series as well. I know they're working really hard to do a lot of recycling this year. And then I've got a column in the city newsletter, which is fun, and the Moab happenings as well. And then Lisa and I are working on the website. So the Sustainability Action Plan, I am really looking forward to August to have a workshop, hopefully with the council, to reevaluate our goals and update them, introduce a new structure, and then set our priorities for moving forward. So that is most of what I've got. Any questions?
I just have one question about the sustainability plan. So we do have a draft that we reviewed with the former sustainability director. So what are going to be the similarities and differences to that draft
So
in a nutshell?
Yeah, so in a nutshell, there will be a reorganization, mostly to make it much clearer and divided up into categories that I think will be a lot more workable as individual categories potentially in the future. And there's a lot of really good information and data in there, and so I'm hoping to be able to transfer a lot of that over and just update it to be current. And then distill the goals from that plan so that the council can set their priorities in a clear format.
Questions from council? Thank you so much.
Sure.
Appreciate that update. We're now in agenda item 6, mayor and council reports. I'll go first. I attended my water quality board meeting, and as my term does expire in August, I have suggested that Carly apply, and we'll see what they say about you joining. But that would be in August. Again, that board is great in terms of the money that they provide communities for all things water quality, whether it be wastewater or drinking water protection. And then also attended the Southeastern Utah Association of Local Governments meeting. Nothing to report from that meeting. And then I did some fun stuff that I wanted to let you all know that I did. Carly invited Teresa Williams, our state engineer, down for a tour for the day, and I was lucky to join them for lunch with Mark Stilson to really talk about where we're headed in terms of watershed protection and aquifer protection. And it's really nice to know that we're having that conversation at the state level. And then they also met with staff while they were here. And that was really, I think that's probably, we're gonna look back and think of that meeting as, one of our more critical, I think, water meetings. As we move forward, also fun, toured with Annie McVeigh, our new Parks Director, and Kaylin was on the tour too. We drove around, and it really reminded me as we were doing sort of a flash tour of our city parks, how lucky we are to have so many great amenities for our locals. And for our visitors to enjoy. For being a city of 5,000 plus people, we really do have some incredible spaces, and thanks to staff for maintaining them so beautifully. Also fun was I was invited by Mayor Fulman to go speak. Julie Fulmer of the city of Vineyard to speak at the Utah Women Run event that they had this past weekend on Saturday at a park in Vineyard. They had a splash pad. I hope we get one soon. But it was really nice to see so many women talking about, politics and being involved and why they ran. And I wanted to give a congratulations to Ben Billingsley, our finance director, on his new baby boy, Ezra James. I know, Ronnie, you're a card sender, so a baby has been born at City Hall. It's very exciting. And then also, after our rezone,
City Hall.
That was my question, Connie.
we have a new baby at City Hall. Yeah, we get to sit, we're a family, and we have a new baby, and,
He was not born here, though.
oh, he was
That'd
not
be
born.
quite a story.
I assume.
No, is that what I said?
Yeah.
Born here? We have a new baby born of the City Hall. Wouldn't that be fun? Think of the revenue. Okay, but what was I saying? Oh, and then after the R3 rezone didn't pass, I wanted to let you all know too that I met with the developers that they wanted to speak to me and get some more information as to why, why it didn't pass and, what they could do, because they really want to see apartments. And I think we all want to see apartments built in Moab. And we all know that the King Creek Boulevard is a place where we already have that type of density. So they do intend to look into a potential subdivision of the parcel to sort of segment out what would be the RA1 area and what would be like kind of the Cane Creek parcel area, as well as part of that subdivision creating an easement for a bike path. So of the things that they heard, of the comments that they heard, that's where they're moving forward, and they're hoping to have sort of a preliminary visit with council, just to take the temperature, before they move forward with the expenses of what a subdivision would look like, to see if that would make the King Creek property more palatable for the R3 zone change. And while townhomes are allowed in the PUD, they were most interested in the idea of apartments. So I just wanted to report that is going to be coming to us for consideration. And is that all the fun stuff I did? There's a couple other things, sorry. USU, I emailed to all of you the well-being survey results. They asked if we all wanted a presentation here at council. I'll not invite them unless any of you reach out to me interested in that. It's a good read, and I think it's definitely worth taking the time to look at that survey, but I'm not sure that I would invite them to present unless y'all wanted me to. So reach out to me if you would like that presentation. And then also with USU, we will be reviewing and presenting to all of you the option. There's a partnership option with the county and with another group. The name is, it's not coming to me, but USU is looking at doing a deeper dive in visitors' data collection and in particular vehicle typology, visitor typology. We make a lot of decisions and it feels like we make a lot of assumptions, and so better data is better policy. I think it's to the tune of 36,000. So it would be a match with other agencies to get that data. That's going to be coming to us for consideration, probably at our next council meeting. And that's it from me. Ronnie.
I didn't have any meetings over this past session, so I'm going to pass to Mike.
Thanks, Ronnie. Mike? I know, I kind of am having the same moment too.
Not so much water this time. Nor I'm going to ask you about landscaping, but later on. But I had a really nice talk for about an hour with Brianna Medina, who runs the Moab Valley Multicultural Center, and she's also a principal in the local homeless coordinating committee, a whole group of organizations and people that they provide services to Moab's homeless population, both those who are living on the streets and those who are living in their cars and so forth. But it was super nice, and I told her I'd put a plug in for our community contributions time. She said they have now, I would not have guessed, 6 full-time employees and 2 part-time employees. And like kind of reminds me of the Grand County emergency rescue people. It started off as a lot of fun, and people would do it for volunteer work, but over time, as it grows and the demand for their services grows, they'd like to get paid more than just a pittance wage, you know, and for that it takes funding. So I'd be pleased if the city can help out along with the rest of the community. They get a lot of donations from the business community, as well as quite a few donations from private people as well. So I think it's a great organization. So stay in touch, folks. And the other thing you were talking about, data, USU, that seems to be one of the big things. I actually went to a Rotary Club party. Joe was there. And I can remember when I was 30 years old living back in Boulder, you know, and I thought about Rotary then. And I thought, oh man, those guys are old. Well, here I am, kids, and it's a perfect fit. But I did talk to Rich Etchberger. He's Liana's husband, and he manages the academic curriculum for USU statewide. And he emphasized that their data-taking facility, because I was talking about controversial subjects that's been in the news and comes up in curriculum and so forth. And he's basically saying our job is to provide the science, to provide the data, so we can make good decisions on it. So anyway, it was very interesting talking to all those, and I want to thank the Rotary Club for introducing me to a variety of new business people whom I largely had not met. So that's it.
Thanks, Mike. Tony?
I don't have anything this week.
We are all on summer break. Feels pretty good. Thanks, Tony. Karen?
Hi there. Can you hear me, you guys?
Yeah. Can?
Okay. So I had a chamber meeting after our last council meeting. Caitlin Myers and Jenna Wetzel gave the chamber board updates on housing projects. Just to date, there's the next year, we are only looking at adding 104 housing units. And there was a great opportunity for some questions and answers for the board as to, what local businesses could do for housing. There was a ribbon cutting ceremony for Berkshire Hathaway last week, and on Thursday there will be another one for the My Place Hotel. The chamber is still soliciting businesses to come out for the 4th of July celebrations to set up a booth and to offer an activity for the community. For any chamber members interested, it is a free, the booth would be free. And for any non-chamber businesses who might be interested in becoming chamber members, they could get a booth for $100 and they would receive a membership for the remainder of the year. I participated in the Grand County Strategic Planning Focus Group that was mediated by the Corradro Group and is sponsored by the Tribal Council and Economic Development Office. We were asked to talk about challenges and opportunities for our community and how we see tourism in the future. I sat in on a meeting with UDOT, Taryn Pierce, and Grand County to discuss logistics moving forward with a transit proposal. I participated in the second chamber chat discussion of workforce housing shortage, short-term solutions. Still, there's going to be some information coming forward to us as a council if there would be any interest in potentially doing a pilot program for allowing trailers to be used for housing temporarily, because we're in such a critical state, and to have further discussions about changing zones to allow higher density. And then I tried to attend the airport board meeting last night. The connection was inaudible, but from our written reports, the activity at the airport is the highest that it has ever been. The SkyWest enplanements for the month of May is the highest on record. In 2019, the previous highest numbers was set for 1,754 passengers. Last month, we hit 1,698 passengers to Denver, 706 to Salt Lake City, which is a combined total of 2,400 passengers. Outside of commercial flights, historically, we had about 10 to 20 flight plans filed for Canyonlands, and this last April, since April to June, we're getting 30 to 40 private airplanes in a day. And then just a heads up, July and August, the commercial flight schedule is going to be reducing to 1 flight a day for Salt Lake City and 1 flight to Denver, and with some of the weekends still offering 2 flights a day to Denver. And that's it for me.
Thanks, Karen. Caitlin?
I attended the Moab Valley Multicultural Center open house, which sounds like much of the same information that Mike reported on was covered, but I was impressed by the range and depth of the services and just how many people they serve every year. It was pretty amazing. So I attended a housing task force meeting, and the most substantive discussion was Katie Meinhardt, Vista that shared between Grand County Planning and the Moab Valley Multicultural Center is working on a more public-facing housing website. Right now there's the Moab Housing, but it's really policy-oriented. But this would be more someplace where if someone's looking for housing, they could go and quickly get a handle on what the resources are that are available in the community. I attended the UDOT and county and Fair and Peers meeting regarding the local government cost share on the transit, which Karen reported on. But one thing that I learned was that there was going to be a bigger transit study that was queued up as part of a trio of transportation studies. And it sounds like this transit pilot project will preclude that transit study because much of the studying that would have been done has already been done, and further information will be gathered via the on-the-ground implementation. So further study may not be necessary once we're moving forward and seeing how it works. I attended a travel council meeting. First quarter had record TRT revenues, but you probably could have guessed that based on the crowds. Seemed like one of the more interesting discussions wasn't really on the agenda, but it was about just sort of some of the traffic impacts, specifically truck and trailer parking downtown, taking up multiple parallel parking spaces, as well as observations of non-street legal ATVs, which I was a little surprised at because I thought that compliance was pretty good these days. That was a challenge 5 years ago. But apparently people who are downtown all the time said that they're still seeing them. That's what I've got.
Thanks, Kaylin. And thanks to council for attending meetings, being active in the community. We are on to agenda item 7, approval of the minutes. Before us are the minutes from our May 4th meeting and our May 11th meeting and our May 25th meeting. Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve all 3 sets of minutes. That was for May 4th, May 11th, and May 25th.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Kaylin. Discussion?
No, just thank you, Summer. I know I had some things, and thanks for taking care of them.
Yeah, I had one minor correction. Somebody caught it. Thank you.
Thanks, Summer. Thanks. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for doing our minutes. I'll call for the, what? We have Eve? Again? Oh, excellent. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes 5-0. We're in section 8, proclamations, the Moab Police Department appreciation and recognition. Before I read this, I do want to also mention that we just had an event where our full-time officer Johnston and our civilian part-time officer Malone were able to provide immediate rescue services, CPR services to a gentleman who went into cardiac arrest. And because of their activities, they were able to save his life. And our chief, Brett Edge, is really celebrating not only the saving of the life by our officers, but also that one of them was a part-time civilian officer and something that he's been working on. So we're so lucky to have Chief Edge and all of our officers. And so, Moab City Police Appreciation and Recognition. Whereas there are approximately 900,000 law enforcement officers serving in communities across the United States, including the dedicated members of the Moab Police Department. And whereas the Moab Police Department plays an essential role in safeguarding the rights and freedoms of all members of the community. And whereas it is important that all residents know and understand the duties, responsibilities, hazards, and sacrifices of our law enforcement agency, and that members of the Moab Police Department are steadfastly committed to safeguarding life and property and protecting our community against violence and disorder, shielding the innocent against deception and the weak against oppression. And whereas the men and women of the Moab Police Department unceasingly provide these vital public services. And whereas in the past year, Moab Police Department Sergeant Jerry Newmeyer, Officers Amanda Edwards and Travis Clark, and former officers Larry Velasquez and Steve Reisenhoover were honored by the NAACP for their actions in 2020 for peacefully resolving a difficult domestic violence situation involving a person armed with a handgun. And whereas Officer Amanda Edwards, while still a first-year member of the department, was also named the 2020 Small Agency Officer of the Year by the Utah Police Chiefs Association. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the City of Moab is proud to recognize the Moab City Police Department officers and officials for their outstanding service, courageous actions, and dedicated efforts every day to keep our community safe and secure. And ask all Moab residents to join in saluting our law enforcement officers, past and present, who, by their faithful and loyal devotion, have dedicated themselves to preserving the rights, security, and quality of life for all of us. Thank you, Moab City Police. And now we are in section 9, old business of our agenda. 9.1, staff review of municipal speed limits. Chuck, welcome.
Good evening, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Thank you for your work in putting together your agenda summary and the attachments.
You're welcome.
We had a meeting before where you presented a lot of information to us about our speed limits, and I felt it was time to get this as an agenda item. And while it is not, where we don't on the agenda itself have briefing and possible action, we need to be very clear with staff in order to give them direction to move forward, because we have some options. And Chuck, thank you so much for taking the time to sit with us tonight and lay it all out before us.
No place I'd rather be.
Aww.
I'm here with y'all.
And that's coming from a guy that likes to run rivers.
I'll be gone Friday morning, so I won't be with you.
Deal.
So we did give you some information a few weeks back, or about a month back, about our inventory of speed limit signs, as well as some maps showing those various locations. And then when we put together the agenda summary, I just thought it was appropriate to give you a technical memorandum of some of the options about how we got to where we're at today. And some of that's speculation, because I wasn't here, and I'm sure a lot of us weren't here when some of those decisions were made. Be that as it may, we know where we're at today, and I think there's some opportunities if council wants to make some modifications, to continue the status quo, to move quickly on some things and maybe slowly on some other things. And I'll get into that in a moment here. I'm just trying to set the stage with, it kind of depends on what you all want to do, right? Once we get down to it, and I have made a recommendation, what I think would be kind of the measured approach, but we'll see how it all sorts out. If I may, I'd like to just have a brief presentation here. The existing speed limit sign inventory, We currently have 112 speed limit signs within the city, of which 65% of them are speed limit 20, 28% of them are speed limit 25, and 7% are speed limit 30. And I want to preface this too for the public. We don't control Main Street speed limit. There's nothing that council can do beyond asking UDOT to do something. And historically, council has asked, and I've asked, but they're happy with where they're at on the Main Street. I've spoken with them in the last 2 months about it. So any decisions the council makes about streets inside the city limits would be exclusive of Main Street or Highway 191, just for clarity.
And is this inventory excluding the Main Street signs?
That's
speed limit
correct,
signs?
because these are the signs that we own as assets, and UDOT has their own signs. Yeah.
Okay.
So we put together a few alternatives, looking at them as potential action. And of course, there's always the no action, which is install no additional signs. Things are working. And you'll see why we included that, because the next slide will be with some costs associated with some of these, which represents some of the level of effort, but not all of it. Then there's the prima facie alternative, which is to say, within the city code, we would have one speed limit exclusively citywide. So as an example, today, in the city code, the prima facie speed limit for, I bet if we had a quiz, no one would guess it, is 30 miles an hour. And we currently only have like 3 streets that are 30 miles an hour. But unless posted otherwise, the prima facie speed limit is 30 miles an hour in the city of Moab today, per our city code. Now, the state of Utah has prima facie for what they refer to as urban districts, and upon the definition of an urban district, it's our city, except for a couple of outliers, that aren't densely developed, like the Sitla lands up by USU. But otherwise, we are an urban district. It's how many houses you have within a certain distance. And the prima facie for the state of Utah is 25 miles per hour for a city such as ours. School zones are also 20 miles an hour prima facie, as an example. So that would be one way to approach it, which is if we wanted the peanut butter approach of one speed limit everywhere, council could adopt that and staff would work towards implementing it. Then there's the composite plan, which I'll go into in a little bit, which is the one I essentially penciled out in the technical memorandum, which takes advantage of some prima facie changes, some additional signage, but not a lot of additional signage, and putting speed limits on streets that might deserve a higher speed limit than others, like a few 30-mile-an-hour streets. And here's a nuance that the MUTCD, the Manual and Uniform Traffic Control Devices, which I gave you some backup information on that last time and talked about it again in the memorandum, says that you don't have to put a speed limit sign on every street. What you should do is put a speed limit sign where the speed changes. So if you're, that could be lots of different ways, whether as you're coming in on Highway 191, how you go from 50 to 45 to 35, that's a speed change that they've made a determination. So they should. And also here, if we're driving down a 25-mile-an-hour street and we turn onto a street that we want to be posted at 20 miles an hour, we should put a sign there that says, now you're going 20 miles an hour, so that you know that there's been a speed change. And that's a nuance because they don't require a sign at every block, because, and we've done the calculations, and I could show you the maps if you want, that show the difference between putting a sign at every block or doing an MUTCD compliant, which would be every place you come into a neighborhood where you're going from 25 or into a 20 zone, you would know that, and you would assume that that's the speed limit within there until you exit out to another area that was 25. Or another option is to install new signs in every block of every street. And there's other alternatives there. I'm not suggesting this is the only set of alternatives, but we thought this was a pretty good range of alternatives for making some choices for council. So there's some estimated quantities and costs for new signs. So I talked with Levi Jones, our Public Works Director, several times at length. Levi and I have costed signs. We know what it costs to put in a brand new sign for a contractor because we keep cost estimating databases. And then we went through what it costs for our staff to do it, the Public Works staff by that. And it's about $600 a sign. So the no action alternative has a zero cost because there wouldn't be any change, right? And that's one reason we wanted to put it there. The prima facie only would require about 10 signs where when you come into the city, like say like
What's the speed limit for that prima facie though?
could be anything. Could be 20, could be 25, could be 30. What we'd be doing is establishing when you enter the city limits, like say off of, as an example, Spanish Valley Drive onto Mill Creek, put a sign there that says, and I'll show you a copy of the potential sign would look like, citywide speed limit 25 unless otherwise posted. That's how we would post it. And there's about 10 locations that we've identified where we would put those signs. Therefore, everyone who comes into the city would have an opportunity to see the sign. And
then we'd otherwise pull the existing speed limit signs?
Or you can leave them, which is the composite plan. That's, see,
And then that
because it
cost
says
is an
unless otherwise posted. So if you wanted to make it 20 as an example, but you're happy with the, what is it, 33% of the signs in the city that are 25 miles per hour, you could leave those because those were otherwise posted. And this would cover all the 15 mile per hour OHV signs that we've put up too, right? Those, because those are posted signs. So those are,
We're not talking about that today.
yeah, not exactly that. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Then the composite plan was kind of a combination of let's go in and post speed limits at the per the MUTCD where we need to, but not at every block for whatever speed limits we want it to be, 20 or 25. I mean, realistically, I don't think anyone is going to make every street in Moab 30. I could be wrong if council tells me that, but that's not my read on it. But if it were 20 or 25, and then we would take advantage of, so the prima facie signs would be the 10 signs there, and then we're recommending that we have some functionally classified streets, and I talk about them in the memorandum, which are the roads that are collectors or arterials, which are the connector roads, and they're the higher volume roads. Like some of our residential roads have on the order of 150 to 200 cars per day, generally speaking, you know, that varies. And it varies on a given day. But a road like 300 South has an average daily traffic of 5,000 ADT. 400 East on the closer to the highway is on the order of 7,000 cars per day. So those roads are functionally classified by the federal government within all local communities, and those are roads that we're eligible for certain federal funds on. And typically, those roads have a little higher speed limit because you're moving traffic from destination to destination. That's why those roads are there, as opposed to I've turned onto my cul-de-sac and I just have to get to my house at the end of the cul-de-sac. You know, typical residential street, low speed, low volume. So that plan, you know, we would recommend based on, and I guess I'd say here that I have discussed this with Chief Edge, and we've been working over the last several years with the radar trailer, collecting data on how fast people drive. And that's a useful tool in establishing speed limits, as I discussed in the memorandum with the 85th percentile of speed and such. And there are streets that are definitely people aren't driving 20 or 25, you know, and then it's a matter of opinion whether or not lowering speed limits will change people's behavior or whether or not people are going to drive the speed that they're comfortable at. I could give you articles from transportation engineers that say both. It's, you know. But you need to recognize behaviors. I mean, and we're not suggesting it's all numbers, you know. And then the signs at a speed change only would keep things basically the way they are. We need about 46 new signs for a cost of $27,000. And if we kept everything the way it is, but we went out and put a sign, I say kept everything the way it is, kept the signs that are in place, changed the streets that are not posted to whatever we wanted them to be, 20 or 25, and we put a sign in every block. We would need an additional 113 signs. And recall, we have 112 today, so we'd be doubling our signs on the ground, which for a cost of about $67,800. And again, this was our recommendation. I don't have strong feelings about it, but the mayor asked me for a recommendation. So we came out with a recommendation. That's why we're doing it this way.
And for what it's worth, it's spaghetti policymaking. I like to cook the spaghetti, throw it on the wall, see if it sticks. If it doesn't stick, we cook it a little bit longer until we get, a good spaghetti dinner. So that is why I asked Chuck to just put some hard recommendations in front of us so that we could make a decision and move on, because I know it's been an issue that some of the council members have been really adamant about moving forward with a solution.
Yeah, so and just to end the presentation, it was lower the prima facie speed limit to 25. That matches the state's prima facie. I think that with the amount of tourists we have, I think that helps. Install signs communicating that speed limit, 25 unless otherwise posted. This could certainly be changing it to 20 miles per hour and then taking that same approach. But if we did go with our recommendation of 25, we would keep most of the existing 20-mile-per-hour signs, certainly all the ones on the local roads. And then we would also recommend posting speed limit of 30 on certain functionally classified streets, such as 500 West and actually it's 500 West and 400 East. Those would be the only two that we would recommend based upon review. And we would take the Williams Way down to 25. One of the few remaining roads we have, the 30 should, in my opinion, be at 25. But that's our recommendation. Thank you for listening to me. Share that information. I'd be happy to answer any questions council has.
Yeah. So this is a solution in search of a problem. What's the problem?
Well, let's let Ronnie speak to that, because she's the one that's brought it up.
So I, Mike, initially, since 2019, raised the fact that we have multiple streets in the city limits with absolutely no speed limit signage. And it seems utterly inconsistent. Like, you can drive down 400 East and a lot of the side streets, you'll see a 20-mile-per-hour sign. When I submitted all of those, that list of streets and numbers, I think there was one on the east side without a sign. Almost none of the streets on the west side had a sign. I can find and read you the list or send you the list of all the streets, but it seemed inconsistent. And then especially when we set a 15-mile-per-hour speed limit for OHVs, it makes more sound islands for people who have no signage. So like if you want to get off a slower street and go to a faster one, it's just unclear, and it just seems silly to not have signage on side streets, especially if you're a residential street surrounded by other 20 mile per hour next to a 25 mile per hour sign, and there's no indication that anything changes. There's also, it seems odd to have these 30 mile per hour, like one block that's 30 miles per hour. Plus, we haven't been able to do much in terms of traffic calming for residents. And this is one tool to use for traffic calming. If you go to Colorado, for example, there are a lot of communities that are 15 miles per hour. And so I've been hearing from residents who would like us to revisit the prima facie speed limit, because they feel like slowing down speeds are one thing that can help reduce noise and make them feel a bit safer, because we haven't made much progress on a lot of other fronts. So, and once some people read this packet and saw that our prima facie speed limit was 30, they're like, well, that certainly doesn't seem appropriate anymore at this time, especially if your OHV speed limit is going to be 15. It just seems like they should be closer. And so to me, it seems like an appropriate time to have a town hall where residents can weigh in on how it's impacting them and what they'd like to see, and whether they'd like us to see it set it at 25 or 20. I do know a lot of people who are being impacted by it, but they live on busy streets, and it sometimes doesn't make sense why, and maybe you can tell us, Chuck, like why. I know you study streets to set the speed limit, But is it generally, if you have higher traffic, do you try and set the speed limit lower, or is it the other way around?
Generally speaking, it's the other way around. So that's why the functionally classified with the higher volume roads, I'm suggesting should be 25 or 30 miles an hour, and the local roads should be 20 or 25 miles an hour. Because and studies show, and I believe there's more studies that show that there is a reality of driver frustration of, I want to drive as fast as I'm comfortable with, and we don't want people to go crazy by any means. But generally speaking, the higher volume roads are the ones that you'd want to set, at least in our city, I believe a little bit higher, meaning in that I've identified them as 500 west and 400 east would be the two that I would put at 30.
Because like if we look at the numbers in the memorandum, we all know, we have one of our higher numbers on 300 south, but it has a lower speed limit than some of the ones. Anyway, sometimes it doesn't, you know what I mean? It doesn't always seem to make sense. And we know from the packet and reading your summary, right? Like none of us really know the history of how that came about. But the other thing is, as we've been discussing OHVs and whether people wanted to set designated routes or not, by creating higher speed limits in certain places, you have to admit you're directly or indirectly creating designated routes by allowing some streets to be faster. So the whole question that originally came about was, is it easy to just add some speed limit signs to these streets that have none so that people who are driving know, like, okay, I have to stay, I'm supposed to stay at 20 here, or they just don't know what it is. So that was the first thing, thinking it was a simple question. And at times when we discussed the budget, it came up a few times in meetings like, oh, okay, do I have to make a special budget request for just these extra signs? And the answer was no. So now it's a little bit confusing, but I also feel like we put money in so many different places, and this is like one potential simple place to do something that helps people feel a little safer. And I feel like it's a worthwhile investment, although I'm a little bit confused because it does sound more expensive now than what we've talked about in the past. But the other thing was the original ask was much bigger and more complicated. It was a question of it seems to be inconsistent. There are places without signs. There are places where people seem to be speeding up and slowing down, which creates these noise islands. There seem to be less sense about 30 being the default, but then also requests that have been coming in from residents for additional signage that was also part of this bigger ask, and how does it fit in and where does it fit in when? Like some people on Cane Creek and 500 West who've been asking for signage on their side streets that says, no OHV trail access down this road, so that people who are confused and looking for the Cane Creek trails aren't coming through neighborhoods at all hours, and to also add some point positive signage to help people find the Cane Creek trails. But then also some requests from people for resident-only parking signs where they're getting a lot of spillover overnight accommodations parking, or even suggestions from residents for, you are entering a residential area. I mean, granted, most of what we have is that, but there have been a lot of requests from residents that I've been forwarding.
What's in front of us right now is just to find direction for the next step. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, and that's just to let the press and the residents know like how this all came about from my end, since I was asked to comment.
Yeah. Chuck, I'm sorry, can you go with your screen back to the option page that showed the cost? Thank you. I like this chart because it shows also just like the alternatives A to E. And I think it's important to kind of zoom out for a second and just say no action is an option. I just want to take the temperature of the council. Is anyone interested in no action, or should we proceed with a conversation around action?
I'm interested in action.
Okay. Action?
Yeah.
Action?
Some action, yeah.
Some action. And so then we're looking.
Mayor?
Yes?
I'm just curious if may I ask Chuck a couple questions?
Sure. Well, let me ask you this, though. Are you also interested in action around changing the speed limits?
Yes, but yes. It's a different type of action that I'm wondering if I could ask about.
Like different from one of the listed alternatives?
Yes. So yes. So we keep having this discussion about complete streets, and through the material that Chuck, you provided, it is strong case evidence, we have a lot of wide, uninterrupted lanes, and trying to when I'm wondering if a recommendation could also be that we look at if we ever get to the point where we have the financial capabilities to, create safer environments and more opportunities for, different types of transit and opportunities for everyone, and better access. If just like the FHWA always suggests, is to do, traffic calming mitigation efforts, and because it says in this report that even though if we had those speed limits, the possibility of people really going those speeds is probably pretty minimal. So if we're looking at street design and changes, would it make sense to try to incorporate, potentially medians on 400 to create lower speeds and not just be talking about signage?
Well, I do want to bring up the idea of the complete streets. That is something that Laurie and Nora and Chuck are working on for an agenda item for the summer.
It's also something that we're working on in the transportation plan. And to answer Karen's question, I say it out in the technical memorandum, traffic calming devices, traffic calming measures can be effective in reducing speeds as much as speed limit signs. So yes, the answer is that could be part of it. It's just a function of budgeting it and doing it.
Yeah, at the same time, I want to rip the speed hump out off of Locust Lane because it's super ineffective and it's not calming.
I probably would not be recommending speed tables to you. We do the bulb outs are much more effective, though they're not 100% effective, but they're more effective in certain situations.
So we're not here to decide on our alternative. We're here to decide on our next step. And so what I'm hearing from Ronnie is that you want to have a town hall.
I think it would be a good idea.
And how do others feel about the idea of a town hall?
I would lean towards adjusting the prima facie to 25 and signing it. And then maybe for streets that since we've implemented, like for 300 South, I think it's 20 because that was when we thought we couldn't have a separate speed limit for ATVs, but now that we do, I'm not sure why that can't be 25 as well. But then to not take further action while the UTP plays out, because that will have a public engagement process and we can talk about traffic calming and the streetscape more generally, and hopefully complete streets as part of that.
It is.
So rather than not make an investment in speed limits and signs independent of that in the short term.
Yeah, I think starting out with the prima facie signs is helpful. The other thing you run into when you oversign is people just don't read them. And I mean, sign pollution is what and people they just ignore them. It's just too much of a distraction. I think the streets that are signed at 20 probably should stay 20. I would be thrilled if 500 West could be 30 miles an hour because my car just goes faster than 25 with my foot off the gas.
I am so the opposite. I so would just be super fine with prima facie at 20.
And I'm talking about the end of 500 West, where the hospital is, and it's more agricultural. Once you cross 400 North, it becomes residential. Yeah. But And I think if you say citywide, speed limit is 25, people are going to read that as they enter the city limits. And so if they don't see a sign, they're more likely to stay at what they recalled.
I'm going to make a request that we come back and everybody review the map of exactly which streets have no signage, because to make some of those streets 25 just seems wholly wrong, because they're totally surrounded by other 20-mile-per-hour streets. So I don't see why, should 300 East be 25 miles per hour? I don't think so.
But that doesn't mean we can't put 20-mile-an-hour signs on other streets.
But that will,
We're looking at $60,000 if we're going to just sign up everything.
Well, no, not every block, but.
So, I would like to come back with that map and maybe a number of signs, check on what isn't signed, which potentially would qualify outside of 25, so we know that, like, the exact cost of those.
You want to do it at a future time?
Yeah, you don't have to calculate it now, but Rainbow Drive, I don't think it has a sign. Should it be 25? I don't think so. So, and I only mentioned that because a resident there asked me and said, my street's not signed. Could we at least sign Bird? And so should Bird be 25? Probably not. It should probably be 20.
Well, so many of the, like if we looked, Ronnie has a really good point. If we looked at all of the roads that are actually signed, they're like the 25 and the 30, and then there's like popcorn of 20, I think.
Well, there are a lot, because Chuck just gave us the numbers, and there's 73 signs.
But what I'm saying is, like, for the streets that are like 25 and 30, they're like definitely signed. If we were to go into prima facie land, the streets that are not signed are majorly like surrounded by the 20 or in the 20 miles per hour. That's actually why I was thinking. So like if we went prima facie 20.
I see what you're saying.
Cane Creek is staying the same, 4th East, 3rd South, 5th West. Like all that would be staying the same. But then the little unlabeled streets that are probably like the 20 miles per hour, that's what that would affect.
But that raises the question for you, Chuck, like, do those have to be studied individually with a traffic study?
I've given a lot of thought to that.
Mm-hmm.
I think I could group them based upon traffic counts and widths and accident data and come up with some suggestions. It might need to be 4 or 5 studies of various neighborhoods, but I don't think I need to do each one of the 45 roads that aren't signed.
And the reason it matters for signing them is a lot of these abut the streets that you all think should be 25. So if you don't sign them, everything just becomes a spaghetti of 25 when really they are residential and they are, Okay, thanks for pointing that out.
So if you look at not posted, those are like the 20 mile per hour kind of zones.
Well, I would say that some of them are. And
I don't see a yellow that I would want to go 25.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Well, and this is the only thing that makes me think that if we could figure out cost and what might change, that's maybe when it's appropriate to have a meeting where the public can at least comment that, on that in the packet. Just because they all know their neighborhoods better than we do in some cases.
Chuck, is it against the MUTCD to do painted signs on the road?
No, those are considered supplemental. So you can do those, and it's not against the MUTCD, but that's not sufficient to notify drivers of a change. You paint the pavement to give them an additional warning, if you will, that the speed limit's changing. It would not be in lieu of a sign.
Okay. Yeah, it just seems like in the residential zones, the quieter streets that we do have, having something painted might be even more eye-catching than having just more signs up. And, like even with the crosswalks in front of the city hall, how effective and, how many compliments people, get for those, like being able to do something, similar, I'm just curious if that would be an effective tool, because it would be cheap.
Well, the thing is, it has to be redone every 2 years, whereas the speed limit signs have a life of between 15 and 20 years. I mean, I think it might be appropriate if we gave it some thought on certain streets, but as a substitute for metal signs, no, it wouldn't be effective.
So I'm struggling to understand what direction we want to give Chuck in moving forward. I'm hearing reach out to the public. I'm hearing prima facie at 25 and then wait until we have the other options, kind of hearing that. I'm hearing paint the street. Let's try to come up with some direction.
I'd be okay with a town hall, although I'm not sure how many people really care, frankly. They might, maybe I'm wrong about that, but otherwise I would, if I had to vote on it tonight, all I know is 13 grand would pay $4,000 for 3 different nonprofit accounts. I mean, I'd rather spend the money somewhere else if I didn't think the signs are gonna buy as much of anything. And I noticed already the mix of signs that you got, Chuck, are largely, nothing much is gonna change, okay? I mean, you still got 63%, 20 miles an hour, and a little more, we're 25, and so, I mean, it's not a huge change no matter what we do. So that's why I asked the question about what we're buying, but Ronnie has a point. Maybe people are all wrapped around the axle about speed limits. I do note that it's a voluntary thing, okay? And a sign is a sign. If residents in town get ticked, so to speak, because the speed limits are ridiculously low or high, for that matter, they're not going to obey it anyway. So we got to pick speed limits that are consistent with reasonable speed.
So you're in favor of a town hall?
Yeah, I would go for it.
And Karen, town hall or no town hall? What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm wondering if we could have it when we go through the process of redoing our side streets. I mean, if it can be a community side street project and get feedback at that time, or does that feel like that would be too late, Ronnie?
You mean when we do our
The dispersed parking.
dispersed parking?
Yes.
So tag it on to dispersed parking as opposed to your idea of tagging it onto
UTP.
the UT,
Right.
Unified Transportation Plan. So
I've been won over to the prima facie 20, given looking at the map and listening to the discussions. But then there's obviously streets that it appears are already signed higher than that, which seem appropriate.
So, I mean, I can just make a suggestion. One thing we could do is propose, because I also like the prima facie 20, we could propose that change, and Chuck could figure out, a lot of those streets are already signed, but the ones that don't have signage, if we did sign them, what they would be, and we could, propose that and have a public discussion about it, and people can weigh in on whether they like that or not. But because a lot of this does seem like it fits envisioning a unified transportation plan, but we know that's like a year out, and you can always, it just seems like if we're already at 65% 20 mile per hour signs, I mean, the majority of our signage is there already. But it does seem like we're all agreed on the fact that we want to change the prima facie speed limit. And you can put it out in a packet as a suggested change to 20 and see what people say.
in a packet and then get citizens to be heard as opposed to a town hall or I would be more in favor of that agenda, the change. And I just looked up how to pronounce it because now I've heard several different, and for consistency, it's prima facie.
I had 2 years of Latin in high school. I'm saying I'm pretty close.
And what are you saying?
I call it prima facie.
Facie.
And I noticed that at Princeton, where was it? They'd taken the study of Greek and Latin out of the classics curriculum. So who knows what they're going to be saying in a few years.
So the proposal in front of us is action on our next agenda where we would change the PF, however it's pronounced, to 20.
can we make it 2?
22?
No,
So
I'm
Chuck
gone
won't
for
be
the next
here.
2 weeks.
Oh, in 2 council meetings, so
that's
not
okay with you. I
the
mean, someone
next,
else
but
could
the-
do it, but
That's fine. Is that, I mean, they've been yes, is that agreeable in 1 month?
Yeah, I would think with a map, and then people can review it, and they can, see if the ones that are higher stay that way, or if Williams comes down to 25, so we have just either 20 or 25. Because it also seems like if we were going to change anything to 30 at this point, that difference with the OHV speed limit of 15 and 30 is it's a pretty wide. So it sounds like then people could review.
Okay, so we're talking the prima facie to be 20, and that would be the only change that we would make at this time, and then future consideration as we go through other transportation feedback, changing plans.
Well, I guess I'd like to know from Chuck, can you just remind me, is your recommendation, even if the, the prima facie, or whatever you want to call it,
25.
I mean, even if it went to, if we did try to
Yes.
change it to 20, would you still suggest then adding more signage? Because we are going to have those places, at blocks where it changes. It's going to go 20, 25 in different places.
I think if this, I said 25.
Right.
Knowing it might become 20, but if this were to happen and with this citywide speed limit was 20 unless otherwise posted, you can leave the 25-mile-an-hour roads alone. It doesn't cost you anything unless
Then
there's
they're already posted.
they're already posted, right? So there's no increased cost there unless you really want me to study each one and see if they need to go down.
No, I guess what I'm asking is, you were saying, it's sometimes logically recommended to have signage when you have 2 streets next to each other that have differing speed limits. So is the recommendation, if there is no signage where things change like that, to add it?
Because we go to this,
Right.
you wouldn't have to.
Okay.
There might be a few places,
Uh-huh.
but it wouldn't be all 45 signs that would be needed right now if we were to kind of start all over.
And I guess the last question is, in Utah, do they ever just paint the speed limit on the street without putting signage? And how does the cost of that compare? Yeah.
No, that was kind of with Karen's question. That
Oh, okay.
the painting is a supplemental.
Gotcha, but it
It's
can't be a standalone.
There's nothing wrong with it,
Just 'cause
and
it
we
seems
have done
cheaper.
it some historically, but it does not satisfy the in lieu of the black and white regulatory speed limit signs. You need
Mm-hmm.
to have those. And then if there's a place where it's like, boy, we really want people to go slower,
Mm-hmm.
then you can paint it, but you have to repaint it every 2 years.
Gotcha.
So there's a recurring expense as
Right.
opposed to the metal signs, which will last 15 to 20, barring vandalism.
Okay, thanks for explaining
So
that.
then, the direction that I'm hearing from council is that not at our next meeting, but the meeting after, we are going to have for discussion and possible action, the changing the prima facie to 20. Unless otherwise posted, knowing that we have posted 25 and 30 in other areas, and that would remain the same, that those speed limits wouldn't change. Yes? Yes? Wonderful. Thank you, Chuck.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to the next agenda item. Where are we? We are on 9.2, Old Business 9.2, Proposed Resolution 25-2021, a resolution regarding the City of Moab's commitment to funding a recreational hotspot transit shuttle pilot program. Chuck, you might as well just stay there for a sec.
Okay.
Carly, I know, because she's presenting, but she has her own table. And so you might as well just stick around. Carly, I don't know, did we have a presentation planned for this?
I do have a presentation just to sort of give a little bit of background so everyone knows where we are. And I think there's some questions about how the money is going to be spent and how it's allocated. So I want to make sure that we answer those questions.
Okay.
So just a quick overview to let everyone know, how much work has gone into this transit proposal. Transit's been talked about for several years here in Moab. But over the past year, we've been doing a lot of transportation planning with UDOT. And this pilot was originally conceived of during the Arches Hotspot Coordinating Committee effort last year, April through October 2020. Initially, transit was not on the table, but we had some really stalwart council members advocating for it. So UDOT eventually came around and agreed sort of midway through to start evaluating it as an option. So by October 2020, the Arches Hotspot Coordinating Committee, as well as this council and the county commission, adopted it as part of the Arches Hotspot Region Concept Package. So this transit pilot was part of that package. Today, you're being asked to pass a resolution to commit to funding about roughly $1 million, or this local community is being asked to be responsible for about $1 million to fund this project. You've actually already approved this in a certain way in November 2020. Back then, the proposal was for us to commit to funding years 4 and 5. The cost schedule is a little different now. It's more refined, given that we know more about the transit project and the option. And so UDOT actually sort of put a pause on our commitment so that the pilot project or like study could be completed, so you would have a better idea of what you were signing up for. So in some way, we've already done this. We're sort of recommitting, knowing like much better what we're getting into. So UDOT had Fair and Peers perform a transit study this winter. They've presented transit scenarios, which are still being finalized, but I think everyone is encouraged by option 4, which had a lot of consensus with this council. And now they're asking now in June for resolutions from both us and the county commission to commit to the funding. Here is just a rough overview of how the costs will be shared. So our contribution, this is a projection, will be probably close to $450,000. Now, Ronnie asked a very good question. She wanted me to clarify. This is money going to the operating contract. There are also soft costs that I'll talk about, but when we're talking about that RFP and that contract, this is what we're talking about. So it's about $2.5 million for that contract. We are going to get 1 year. We're going to get 5 years for 1 year of our investment, is one way to look at it. Right now, the plan is to pay closer to over 4 years instead of just years in 4 and 5. So we sort of ramp up our contribution and we start leveraging FTA funds earlier. The county has agreed to dedicate $250,000 of their restricted TRT to funding this project.
Annually?
No, total. 250, and these are totals, so not annual, total for the 5-year project. The FTA has 5311 formula grants for rural areas that would be available to us. We would apply for those grants early on.
Are they competitive?
They are competitive, but it's not so much it's not necessarily the pie gets more competitive as more people participate. It's like the pie gets bigger, if that makes sense. So I think there's a lot of confidence that we would be competitive for these grants, especially because I think only one rural transit agency currently gets them in the state, and so they're eager to expand that program to other rural areas. And UDOT is the administrator of these funds, and so we're talking to UDOT, the ones who are giving us this grant to begin with are also on board with us getting FTA funds. They will match up to 50% of operating costs and up to 80% of capital costs. It's more reliable that we probably get around 30%. So that's what I think a better case scenario to predict. And then UDOT, of course, is contributing 60% of the project costs. Now, it's up to you to whether you want to commit to this funding, but this is probably the least amount of money you could conceivably invest to get a project of this size and participate in a pilot of this size. So again, you're paying for 1 out of 5. We're getting 5 years for the price of 1 year.
And then year 6.
And then year 6 is, the future. So we determine how effective this has been.
We stop the shuttle.
We stop, yeah.
So at this point, was there more?
There's more. It's about the soft costs.
Oh,
this
okay, thank you. Got it.
So these soft costs are about like marketing, promotion, just sort of managing this contract. The biggest cost are about like marketing and promotion and the city employee coordinator. The city employee coordinator is not a new cost. This is just, but we're identifying that we're going to have someone doing something part-time for us, probably an existing employee. So these costs kind of vary depending on our level of engagement. It might not take $5,000 every year to brand it. We just brand it once, and we just maybe like replace logos if needed. And it depends on how much marketing and promotion we want to do. That'll be part of I think, a bigger discussion with the county about what we want this to look like. And shuttle storage too. We might be able to put shuttle storage in the RFP. Like we require the contractor to come up with storage. So that's something maybe we don't have to pay for. So these are sort of still to be determined. And just really quickly, next steps, the county is going to be approving a similar resolution. This is going before the Transportation Commission to approve our whole package. So the 3 projects, transit, parking, and the pathway. We'll then negotiate an ILA with the county to talk about how we sort of govern ourselves and how we manage this contract. We'll do some branding development and outreach here, likely get a consultant to help us with that. And then UDOT will be finalizing the RFP for issuance in consultation with us. And that's all I've got.
Quick question, Laurie. In this resolution 25, in the therefore be it resolved, if the county were to decide not to pass on June 15, in case there was concern on that, does this bind us to doing it if it's not passed? It's just this, it's partnering. It says that we're partnering through interlocal agreements, so I just want to get your opinion on that one. Just so the council feels safe. That if the county said no thanks, then we'd be okay.
Yeah, I'm double checking.
Yeah. Take your time. Good advice is good.
It's that YouTube delay. Yeah, no, I think paragraph 3 makes it clear that we're partnering, so that it is contingent on the partnership. That was your question, correct?
Yeah. Okay.
And also, we also create the legislative history here right now, so you can make sure that that is clear as well with this question and the answer and the discussion that you have too.
Okay.
That's your intention.
Well, I feel comfortable with that answer. I would entertain a motion.
Oh, can we just ever so quickly do a math recap?
Yes.
So that 450 is for 4 years? That's the total for 4 years?
About 4 years, so we're going to probably pay it over 4 years for the contract. That does not include the soft cost calculation.
Right, so the soft cost, I don't know if I did the math right. I tried to add up the maximum end of what you have without shuttle storage, although I guess shuttle storage could be big, so maybe I should redo my math. But does it, like 72,000 a year sound right without storage?
That could be conceivable. So like, 70 to like 90, depending on what we do per year.
Yeah, okay.
So that initial year, we're thinking like $73,000 in soft costs, and it kind of goes up to 90,000 because of like inflation. We know we're going to be paying our employee more over time, those kinds of things.
Okay, so if we did 90 for 4 years, that'd be 360,000. We add it to the 450.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's 810. And then just remind me where we think it's coming from.
Well, I think if we're thinking about like we take the employee cost out of it because we intend to budget for it already. That's about 125,000. And then, if we want to, what Ben kind of mentioned was that this is a really good reason to institute the property tax because we can guarantee that we will have that funding over the next 5 years, regardless of sales tax and those kinds of things. What we're committing to tonight is that we will give 450,000 or around that we're on the hook for $1 million. But we're anticipating 450,000.
Plus the soft costs, right?
Plus the soft costs.
So just to play devil's advocate, if we didn't succeed in passing a property tax, well, I guess.
Yeah.
If the support, isn't there or something even for a small one, then we got to find that money elsewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. And I think it's sort of the way I think of it is, it's $450,000, about 400 to 500. That's about $100,000 a year. Is that something that we feel, that realistically we feel you could commit to?
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
So the question should have been, if somebody was giving you $10 million, do you have $500,000 annually in the bank to do something with it?
Yeah.
So Well, I would entertain a motion.
I will move to adopt Resolution 25, 2021, a resolution regarding City of Moab's commitment to funding a recreational hotspot transit shuttle pilot program.
Thank you, Mike. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Kaylin. Discussion? Karen, just in case, do you have discussion on this? Tanya, were you going to say something?
Just touch on something that Carly just said. The way this transit plan is presented, I am opposed completely to using our property tax if we choose to pass that. The way it's structured, it's an amenity for hotels. I am hopeful that if we approve this, that this will be looked at sooner than year 4 or 5, and this will encompass our densest population centers, and it will service our local employers that are not hotels, that it doesn't just become the bar hopping bus. Those are the things that I worry about, and right now I'm reluctant to saddle our full-time current residents with that kind of a debt that on its face as it's presented today looks like it just services Main Street and very little else. And so I'm willing to support this, but I really, really want to see some concrete projections about how it is going to serve our residents.
Any other discussion?
I would just point out that commercial properties will pay property taxes too. So,
Well,
and part of the goal of this is to reduce the parking demand and congestion generally, which benefits all users of our streets. So I'll be supporting it. I'm a little nervous about the cost too, but I think it's worth giving it a shot.
I agree, Tony, entirely with you, and I think we'll have a chance to pitch in and try to amend the plan to make that happen. We'll find out. But you have a good point.
Any other discussion? Karen, go ahead.
Yes, I'm sorry. Sorry, you guys. It's a little delayed on my end. I think this is a super amazing opportunity for us to work in partnership with UDOT. This is $1.5 million that we get to really implement a pilot project. And Tawny, I totally agree with you that it has to serve residents. And so I was very happy to hear that option 4 is going to be more flexible in being able to do that. So, I think the ideal is, we are going to be picking up folks to be able to get to work and to get home and to, potentially recreate at Powerhouse and not have traffic up and down Spanish Valley and off of 400 and Main Street. So, I think there is, with guidance from us and partnership, we're going to be able to accomplish that. So I'm excited to support this project.
Okay. With that, I'm going to call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Moving on to proposed ordinance 9.3, proposed ordinance 2021-09, text amendments to Moab Municipal Code 12.20.005, modifying the
Mayor?
Yep.
Forgive me. So I just would like, everybody knows that I have an interest in a bike shop, and so I would like to recuse myself from this vote and discussion, and I'm not sure how I do that. I could just watch the YouTube and I'd be totally delayed and miss everything.
Karen, you're fine. Just hit mute. Thank you for your recusal. And just for what it's worth, I think if there's an item that you want to recuse, once I read the title, then at that point you can recuse. But thank you, Karen, for that. Where was I? Modifying the definition of motorized vehicle and adding a definition for e-bikes and to Moab Municipal Code 12.20.060, allowing Class 1 e-bikes on city path systems and setting a 15-mile-per-hour speed limit on Mill Creek Parkway. So Lori, thank you for standing in the blazing heat this past week and doing an e-bike demo so that we are sure we know what we're talking about tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. I am happy to do that. If you can, is this close enough? Can you hear it okay?
I'm not sure if you're amplified, actually. But she's good on the YouTube? Yeah, maybe just pull over. Sometimes that mic runs out of battery, and so maybe we're there, but
Should I unplug it?
it is 9 o'clock.
Should I try the other one? I don't know. Is that in your folder? All right, I'm gonna let Summer, because I have visuals in a minute, so I can start on the presentation. I'm gonna make it brief. This is back before the council. It was tabled on April 27th, and there's been some updates since then. The Trail Mix County Advisory Committee I presented to them basically this presentation, and they considered a proposal to allow e-bikes and made a recommendation to the county council to consider Class 1 e-bikes on a trial basis on county pathways. And thank you. So since that time, then that was, I think, the day of our council meeting on May 11th, and then just recently the county considered their recommendation and passed a resolution allowing Class 1 e-bikes on essentially the pathways within their jurisdiction, and did not include the recommended trial period that Trail Mix had proposed. So here we are with that update since last time. I just want to clarify the purpose of this ordinance, and also for press that comes out, I was asked to clarify this doesn't affect mountain bike trails. So we don't want press to come out that Moab is now open to e-bikes. This is an ordinance.
Got that, Doug?
Yes,
Right, so we, this is, and I wanted to state that up front because we don't want any confusion. This is a city path systems, not mountain bike trails. And so the real issue is, the city's path systems within the city's jurisdiction what does the council want to do regarding e-bikes? So a couple things I wanted to talk about. The mayor mentioned we had an e-bike demo, so Specialized Bicycles came out with a bunch of bikes so that we could demo. And what I wanted to do is just show a few visuals because these days e-bikes are almost indistinguishable from a regular bike. So this is a Class 1 e-bike, and I was going to play the Guess the Bike, but this isn't. So you can see there's virtually not much difference. One of the other ones I wanted to show you is I did stump some people earlier today we will play this one. This one. So this is what's hard in our trail system, path system right now, is that there are users with e-bikes on our systems and we don't, are they e-bikes or not? So actually this is an e-bike. And the last one I wanted to show is a little bit more functional. This is actually an e-bike.
What's that class?
That's a Class 1. What I wanted to show was one last one, if I can find it here. This is actually a class 2 e-bike. So we've talked a little about class 1 bikes. Class 1 bike is an electric bike with a motor that provides assistance only when pedaling and goes up to 20 miles an hour. Class 2 has a motor that may be used to exclusively propel the bicycle. And so some cargo bikes like this one are class 2 or class 3. Class 3 can be pedal assist, is only pedal assist, and can go up to 28 miles an hour. So the only reason I wanted to bring that up is I know the ordinance I drafted says class 1. I kind of wanted to point out the class 2 and class 3 just for thought, because I think there are people in town who use this as a means of transportation for loads heavier than you would be able to carry on a regular bike. So I know people who have cargo bikes to carry their kids, groceries, furniture. So that's why I bring up some of these pictures is class 1, I think, are a lot of the recreational bikes. Sometimes the class 2s and 3s are utility bikes. So something just to think about.
But somebody could still ride a utility bike around town, they just wouldn't go on the parkway.
Correct. They could use the bike lanes. Correct.
Wouldn't be going up to Bar M.
No, and that's why there's, we have different uses. So we have trails that are multi-use where they're transportation and recreation, and some that are more recreation. So the path system up towards Bar M, I would say, is more recreation, whereas Mill Creek Parkway is more transportation, recreation. The way you can tell e-bikes, and I forgot to send myself this photo, but I took a photo at the demo. Every bike marked right about where the back of that gentleman's heel is has a mark where, generally in that area, where it labels the class of the bike. So under Utah law, the class of the bike is required to be affixed to the bicycle, the number of watts, and the maximum power. So if you said, I want to know, the police want to know what type of class of bike this is, they can look right at the frame of the bike and see it. So, and that's Utah law. That's any bike that's sold in Utah has to be labeled that way. So we could know pretty quickly what class the bike is if we needed to for enforcement purposes. The other thing I wanted to talk about is that this ordinance I brought back to you with a slight change based upon some of the concerns that were brought up with comments. It seemed to me the comments we received were concerns of speed. And what I think about the speed on Mill Creek Parkway is that is a speed problem, not necessarily a device problem, where I can go fast on Mill Creek Parkway regardless of what device I'm on, whether I'm on my e-bike, which I don't have one, but my regular bike or whatever device I'm using. So if we have a speed problem on Mill Creek Parkway, that's why I included a 15-mile-an-hour speed limit. And one of the issues was why 15? And it is because that's generally a standard for bike path systems. So I did some research. If you know the Bay Area, there's something called the Bay Trail, and it circles the whole Bay Area. It's very, very heavily traveled, goes through lots of residential areas. The speed limit in the East Bay Trail system is 15 miles an hour, which includes the Bay Trail. The portions of the trail that I used when I lived there were 15. Denver has a big system of pathways that are recreational and transportation that are much more heavily used than Mill Creek Parkway, and they have a 15-mile-an-hour speed limit. And then I took, hold on a sec, took a photo here. This is the kind of signage you could do. So, and you can see how wide this path system is. This travels from downtown Denver to the suburbs. So this is a huge commuter corridor, lots and lots of traffic on this. And bikes and pedestrians have figured out how to coexist here. And there's also another sign that has a picture of a bike, and it says bike yield to peds. I talked to Levi today and just got a sense about signage, and he indicated these are much smaller than the speed limit signs we would use for cars. So he was thinking the bike path signs would be smaller than the 12 by 12 signs we used for the OHVs. So a bike path sign might be $35 or $45 a piece. Well, we installed the OHV ones, so I think for the number of signs we might need, we could install them ourselves, so it would just be the time of our department staff to do that.
Okay.
Lori, if the sign says bicycle speed limit, does that mean e-bikes and regular bikes? Okay.
And I would say, I don't think we should say bicycle speed limit. I think we should just say speed limit, so everybody needs to go 15. I think the device doesn't matter, it's the speed, and if someone's walking and someone on a device passes them quickly, whether it's a scooter or a bicycle, it's still scary, or could be. So I think my recommendation would be that we would just say speed limit 15. And I know the other issue I thought about quite a bit was the enforcement. And my take on that is that there are people who will go the speed limit because there's a speed limit and they see it and they abide by it. And then I also think there's peer pressure in our community. I definitely know there's some peer pressure regarding use and cyclists who I've definitely asked people to slow down or asked people to be more careful. So there is a bit of peer pressure where you don't get that in a car unless someone kind of yells at you. There isn't much peer pressure where there would be peer pressure. And then, yes, there might be scofflaws who are not going to obey the speed limit, but unless there's a police officer there. But hopefully that's a minority. I think you might get compliance by putting up signs. So those are the things that I wanted to bring up since the last.
So Laurie, maybe a sign that reads, "Be courteous" might help. I mean, that's
sure, and
about.
Absolutely. And there are some that say call out when passing. So what I realized when I rode path systems like this is that a bell is the handiest thing you've ever had, because it's not shouting at anyone, and it's actually very clear. People understand that that means you're coming. And so usually I would ring a bell well in advance so people have time to look back and see that I'm coming. People move aside, you can go around. I usually give them a wave, so I'm not just honking my horn at them. But it works, and people learn that that's an etiquette. And I think obviously telling someone you're passing is also good etiquette. But yes, there are signs that you can put up that say call out when passing or be courteous.
I'm curious of the companies that rent bikes, who puts bells on their bikes?
Yeah, that's a good question. And
Nora just said you have to.
In many places, I think, I don't know if you tell you have to or not, but I think you do. I think you have to tell everybody.
Well, I would entertain a motion.
Oh, and I actually,
one question, if I may.
I can pull the motion up too.
Won't change my vote, but I'm just curious. The dirt portion of the Mill Creek Parkway between First West and Fifth West, that's still off limits, is that correct, to bicycles altogether?
So I would say and I will double check the inventory. I would think that's part of the city's path system. So you're changing the rule for all path systems. So I answered the question on the Google Doc, but the answer is it would be for all paths. So it would be the paved and the dirt, which would make sense because you probably wouldn't just go through the paved section. If you were trying to get from point A to point B, you might continue on the dirt section. But you can change that. Like, we can alter the ordinance tonight if you didn't want that to be the case. But the way it's written right now is it would be allowed on city's path systems.
You ready to make a motion, Ronnie?
No, I actually had
a question
and a few things.
No, I don't think
I don't know if Mike's done.
I don't think I'd take it out personally, but I know some people they really like ambling down the dirt. I mean, I'm down there all the time, and it is pleasant. But again, it's where courteousness comes in. You know, one bad apple spoils the broth, kind of thing. So,
right.
Yeah, thank you.
So I just wanted to thank you, Lori, for answering some of my questions today. And in case it's helpful to someone else, I was just going to bring up a few details that I learned that I just thought helped me understand this a little bit better, and then one or two outlying questions I had for the rest of you. And one was, I noticed that Trail Mix had recommended a 1-year trial period, and I had no idea if that was something someone was interested in, but I'm just throwing it back in case it was something someone wanted, because it's not in the resolution now. And then I did check with Lori, because the question arose to me, oh, well, does that mean I can use my my Class 1 e-bike on the Bike Skills Park? And it sounds like that's maybe.
So my interpretation of that is that the Bike Skills Park is not a path system. What you're adding, you're allowing Class 1 e-bikes, the way the ordinance is written, is on path systems. I would not say that the Bike Skills Park is a path system. So if the police called me and said there's an e-bike, in the Bike Skills Park, I would probably say you can encourage them to not be there because they're allowed on path systems. And I would not say that that's a path system.
Okay, yeah, I was just trying to think through, questions that arise as one thinks through it. And the other thing that was helpful for me to realize was if one does go with the Class 1 e-bike, that doesn't preclude someone under the Americans with Disabilities Act from using a Class 2 or a Class 3 because they're covered for using those. And the only other issue I had with voting tonight was, to me, this issue, because we're talking about allowing a new kind of vehicle to travel on the parkway, given the feedback we got from residents about the way the Bike Skills Park played out and how upset they were that they didn't have an opportunity for input. I really did feel like this item, because we're adding, in some people's minds, we're changing the definition if we pass it, but in some people's minds, we are adding something motorized to the pathway, and we're adding a speed limit. And so to me, that does trigger that change of use we talked about, where we did tell residents we would give them the opportunity for public input, and we talked about things like town halls and other things. So that's just the one step that I feel like this still needs. That's all I have to say.
And I can address that because Ronnie did bring that up earlier today. So I brought up the change in land use administrative rule that the council passed about a year ago. And so what I wanted to do is just point out what that rule, or the administrative rule, says. And it says that the following procedures apply to the city of Moab when the city, as owner of a piece of real property, intends to change the use of the real property to a different use in a non-emergency situation. And change in use is defined as a different use other than the current use of the real property, resulting in a change in the pattern behavior of the real property, and may include infrastructure, resources, contractual agreements. The city council has the discretion to decide whether or not the contemplated different use meets the definition of change in use as defined in these procedures. If there is a change in use, the city council has said that they will conduct a public process. You have discretion at what point in time to conduct the public process, the length of time, and the type of public process. And we had listed out some of the possible public process ways. They could be a town hall, open house, listening session, public meeting. And what I want to point out is we've had 2 public meetings on this topic already. Public hearing, public comment at a city council meeting, or survey or other event at your discretion. So if you determine that this is in fact meets the definition of change in use, and you want to have public process, I would say to you, you have had public process. If you so determine that you want to stick with what you've done already, it is defined as a public meeting. So you've had 2 public meetings. If you choose to have more public process, that's completely your discretion to do that.
Can I just take the temperature of the 4 of you regarding this distinction?
I'm ready to move forward with this. I'd be open to making it a 1-year trial period, and that would in and of itself sort of be a test. But I do feel like this has been a topic for us for a while, as well as Trail Mix and the county commission. So
So you're ready to move forward. Okay, let me just,
absolutely.
Tawny?
The way that I would interpret it is it's not a change of use. There wasn't a definition for e-bikes in our code to begin with. We've redefined what that is. We haven't, it's still a bicycle.
Change of use?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with the definition. If is the question whether to make it 1 year trial period or not?
I think what Ronnie is saying is she feels like it's a change of use and should have triggered a public hearing or some kind of public outreach. So I'm just checking in with each one of you.
Okay. No, I don't think it's necessary.
Okay. So
Can I just ask a process question? If we end up voting now, how many votes does it need to pass? Since we have one abstaining member, sometimes it gets confusing.
You
know.
just need a
Someone's-
majority. And so I was just going to say on the 1 year trial period, thank you for bringing that up because I did want to mention, I asked at the bike demo, the gentleman who presented and brought the bikes, and he said he'd done a number of presentations to different communities. Jefferson County in Colorado had done a trial period, and they monitored the number of complaints they got or concerns during the trial period, and they did not see an increase in the number of complaints or concerns during the trial period. So, and we can certainly add a trial period to the proposed motion.
And an alternative too is that we have a spreadsheet where we're tracking agenda items, so we could put on our 2022 spreadsheet for June a check-in, as opposed to formalizing it in an already, finished document. Would you be comfortable with that?
Yes, or I'm comfortable with just not doing anything formal or informal, but just that knowing that this legislative body can change its mind on any of these things.
Sure. Okay.
But I just propose that as sort of an intermediate, like that if people were, yes.
Okay. I would entertain a motion.
And I'm sorry, it doesn't all fit on one page. So if someone is reading, I'm happy to
The
follow.
motion? Could we say motion as stated in our packet?
Absolutely, on pages 1 and 2, the proposed motion as stated on pages 1 and 2.
If you scroll up, can you read the whole thing?
I move to approve ordinance number 2021-09, text amendments to the Moab Municipal Code 1220-005, modifying the definition of motorized vehicles and adding a definition for e-bikes into Moab Municipal Code 1220-060, allowing Class 1 e-bikes on city pass systems and setting a 15-mile-per-hour speed limit on Mill Creek Parkway.
Thank you, Kaylin. Is there a second?
I will second.
I'll take it from Tawny this time. Tawny second. Discussion?
I think overall this is a good thing. I think it's been, there's been a fair amount of community engagement by different entities, and it'll serve especially our transportation needs as we work to move beyond automobiles.
And I want to add that, on my regular bike, I get passed by e-bikes. Well, once in a while, I'll pass one of them, but not too often these days. And I'm comfortable with it. And we've been hearing about this for a long time, so I think it's a step forward.
Any other comments?
I'll just say, I'm glad that this will allow some of our senior friends or just other friends who enjoy the e-bike to use the pathway, because I can understand how and when people don't want to be on the streets. I am going to vote against it, but only because of the process issue, because for me it triggers the change in use thing. But otherwise, thank you all. I think it's probably ultimately a good experiment to run. Yeah.
I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Karen is abstained.
Oh, that's right.
Or she's
Sorry.
recused herself.
I guess that would be me, just for process. Yeah.
Okay, so the motion passes 3-1.
Great.
Okay, thanks, Laurie, for all that work.
Thank
You
you.
really dug into that. Now you are an expert of something you maybe never thought you would be an expert of.
I'll just point out it was a motorized vehicle.
What?
It's my expertise.
Yeah, now it is. Okay, we're on to new business 10-1, proposed resolution 13-2021, approving the final master plan development, MPD, and phase 1 plat for the Linesback development located in access from Sam Flats Road. Council, I was asked to allow the applicants just a few moments to address the council, and I said yes to that. So if you wouldn't You'd be so kind to entertain a brief presentation, or sorry, just points. Looks like we are going to dongle.
If we can figure it out.
Thank you for joining us this evening.
I'm already have these. I should.
He's an expert in the dongle.
Yeah, I mean, I have to do it every time, so I don't know. Open the click share and start the software.
Is that what it says?
Yep.
Is it a PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Yep.
You could email it to me and you could use my machine, if that's easier for you.
Since it's all dongled.
Yeah.
There's not a better word in the dictionary. Karen, are you back with us? I'm going to go ahead and unmute, or let me know that you're still with us.
Yes, I'm here. And Nora, your haircut looks very nice.
Oh, thank you. I just couldn't stand it anymore.
And if not, we'll skip this and we'll just.
There we go.
There it is.
There it is.
Yep.
Then it'll give you a little black bar that'll say, ready to go in the conference room.
There's a bug in here.
It's just a,
Got scared it was a mosquito.
it's an elm beetle.
They're coming. God, I smell them.
They can smell you too.
I know. I was Googling mosquitoes last night just to remember what they're attracted to. Carbon dioxide and heat. So I just stopped breathing.
Stay out of your car.
Yeah.
Perfume.
There we go.
Peppermint detracts them.
It does?
I'm told, a peppermint spray.
There we go. Excellent.
Thanks for everybody's patience.
And can you just let me know how much time you'll be taking for this?
30, 40 minutes, is that? It's hard to pack 17 years into like 10 minutes.
It is. We did already have a really nice comprehensive presentation from Nora.
Yes,
on the timeline of things.
10 minutes?
10 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. And maybe I'll do it faster.
Oh.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you, everybody, for letting us give you just a few minutes of time. And this project has a long storied history, as everybody knows.
Can you bring the microphone? Actually, I think we're going to have you use the one with the wire on the other side, just so that it is recorded.
Okay, is that better?
That is better. Bring it a little closer. And
A little
welcome.
closer. Okay.
Yes, now yes.
So,
Tell us
anyway,
who you are.
I'm John Dwight with our entity now is LB Moab owner. We're the developer and owner of the project. And it's as I was saying, we're this project has a 17-year history, and we're happy to be here tonight. And finally, we hope to be moving forward with the first phase of the project. Certainly, it's been controversial in the community, but we hope that in the long run, that people will see what the Lions Back Resort can actually bring to the community, and I'm going to talk just a little bit about that as we move through here. This project now this is frozen. Let's see if there we go. I won't go in, because Nora did a very good job on the history of the project, other than I just wanted to touch on, our family got involved in this. Michael and Jane Badger, my parents, Michael first discovered this opportunity back in 2004, so it's truly been 17 years. And, so we didn't just show up in Moab yesterday. Bringing my children here for over 20 years, and they've grown up coming to Moab and visiting my parents. And we had the opportunity to own the Gonzo Inn for many years, and I think it's a great story because we actually ended up selling that last year to locals, Josh and Callie Bisco, and Callie had worked at the hotel, started in housekeeping for over 20 years. So the Lions Back Resort, obviously is a very unique project, and we're here excited to at least be talking about the first phase of the first 34 units. I'm going to skip through a few things just to make this quickly, and if anybody has any questions, happy to answer them as we go along, and I can stop. This is just a little bit of the branding and what's going on with the resort, bringing a different level experience, I think, that then exists today in Moab. A lot of people have been wondering what has been going on for the past 2 years. We've been working.
I think if you bring the microphone closer, it'll not do that feedback thing.
Closer.
That's better.
The infrastructure, I just wanted to touch quickly so everybody understands what has happened up there over the past 2 years, past year of construction, which is we're literally about a month away from wrapping it up. It's about $5 million of infrastructure to get the water, sewer, and all the dry utilities up to the site. And I think we've had a very good relationship in working with the city staff, on creating a system that, they'll be proud to own and maintain as we go forward. Just a quick map here, and really what's going on, so everybody has seen, is we started down both on Oak Street and Sand Flats Road near the cemetery, and we connected to city water at Mill Creek and Sand Flats and brought that all the way up. That little building on Sand Flats and Oak, that's the water booster pump station that pumps up to our water tank, and then the sewer comes from over on Oak Street. And then we get up to the top, and up top we have a water tank that's about 275,000 gallons that delivers both domestic and fire protection water to the project. And if anybody's been up there and seen it, it's pretty big right now, but actually there will only be about 18 inches to 2 feet that won't be buried in that tank. So we spent a lot of money to hide that tank and make it go away, except for the top. And then there's a water booster pump station being built right now up there. As Nora touched on, this is the site plan. I'm going to pass of the overall project. Today we're just talking about phase 1, and I'm going to let me go back here.
So excuse me, John, the little red houses you showed them 2 slides back.
Sure.
That's just phase 1, or that's the whole thing?
That's the whole thing.
That's the whole thing.
Yeah, Mike, that's trying to figure this. There we go. Yes, that's the whole project right there. And what those colors are is actually the different type of casitas. So we're building a set project. So the yellows are our smaller clubs, and the magenta are the little bit bigger village casitas.
And the little blue ones down in the lower left are?
That's employee housing, correct.
And that's phase 5.
That is phase 5. I'll touch on that briefly. It's, affordable housing's, an issue not just in Moab, it's an issue everywhere. And when we build the hotel, it's something we're going to have to look hard at. And, I don't want to make any commitments tonight. We aren't here to talk about the hotel, but one, we want to look at the number of units and what we actually need. There's 18 approved up there, but we think there may be more required for us to operate a hotel efficiently. And so we're going to look at options of how we can do more employee housing. And the timing, again, when we get to the hotel, I think part of the reality is that we may need to build it early, phase 5. But at this point, we don't know when the hotel will build. So one thing I did want to mention, Nora did touch on this open space map, and we have, through the SAR zoning, open space requirement of 70%. In this first phase, we're actually dedicating 82%. And the reason is we wanted to show both the city and the community that, we're trying to do the right thing here. And if you see the line on the hatch mark, between the hatch mark and the solid there, that's Sand Flats Road. And so something that's been important to us too is that all that area on the other side of Sand Flats Road remains pristine. The side we're developing on was the old campground, but the other side of the road has always been a pristine site. And so we're dedicating that open space with this first phase. This one's a little hard to see, but if you can see the red lines in there, the other thing's important to us is maintaining the trail access and for the community, and then having trail access for guests and owners in the resort. The red lines the dash red lines are existing trails. There's Hell's Revenge. Along the ridge line there, it's really kind of an unnamed trail. We intend to actually improve it. It does connect to, a lot of locals ride, Dave's trail and things like that. We can't control what Dave does. He's been very open with people riding, those trails now, but we intend to maintain that. Obviously, we're leaving part of our development agreement. We'll always have Hell's Revenge open. And then the other one up at the right there is the Mill Creek Trail. And we intend to, maintain that connection and have that parking area up there that's already on the side of the road. This is the first phase, the first 34 homes. Couple just highlights on our design considerations. A big intent, and it follows the SAR zoning, is to maintain the natural vegetation and landscaping. All of our vegetation and landscaping that we are planting around the casitas, falls in native vegetation materials. And we actually are working with our consultants, and we hope to actually become a leader in the community and coming to the water conservation program and how we're developing that, and hopefully set up, some precedent on what other developments might look to in minimizing the water use. The Sand Flats Road improvements, we've talked about that. I did want to make one clarification, and Chuck, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the agreement with Bill Jackson was to actually pave the 4-foot section at the second phase? Correct. Okay. So we've been working really close. I know Christina Sloan had sent a letter. It surprised us a bit because Chuck and Bill Jackson and I had been in multiple conversations and thought we were coming to a resolution. But the bottom line is we have now, and I think Bill's on board and we're on board, and I think we have a fair program going forward. But most importantly, that the path that follows Sand Flats Road that's off the road is going to be an 8-foot wide, bike trail that will front our whole property. Just a little bit about the infrastructure within the resort. All of our roads will be 15 miles per hour. They're meant to be promoted as both, for all modes of transportation, walking, bikes, and vehicles, and 15 miles an hour so that, you're comfortable sending your kids down the street and not worrying about all that. All of the water and sewer system has been designed to city standards and meets all of that criteria. And then all of the dry utilities are in place. And then I'll just wrap up here really quickly is just a couple, Nora mentioned we've got some renderings out on the casitas now. This is our smaller club casita. They're 1,600 square feet and 2-bedroom, 2.5 bath. And then this is the village casita, which is the 2,100 square foot, 3-bedroom, 3.5 bath. So I tried to move through there quickly, and I can stay up here and answer any questions, or I can come back up as you guys get into it if you have any questions.
Council, do you have any questions for John? Mike?
Go ahead.
So the $5 million that was invested in the utilities, was that money that the developer, that you paid, or was that from the state?
That was a combination of us and the state.
And yep. Could you say what that split was?
Sure. It's about $5 million of it. There's some different divisions because we've got buckets too. I'll just tell you at this point, the state's got $4 million on infrastructure investment in it, and to date we have about $8 million invested in the project.
Okay, so the 8 million includes soft costs as well as?
That's us, yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, thanks.
Yes. So John, I noticed some trees for your landscaping. Is that the major new planting that you're adding?
Yeah, so real quickly, what we've done in our civil plans, that were submitted to the city in the detailed civil plans, there's a lot of junipers up there. And so what's really critical is we've mapped all of those. And so we are going to go up in all of our contractors in bidding this work. They are required to, first of all, to set our limits of disturbance physically with a fence. So when we start construction of the infrastructure or homes, they can't go past that. And the goal is to maintain those. And then there are some new plantings and trees, but it's pretty minimal if you think about the size of the property, but there are some minimal trees.
Yeah, all that's great. I just want to give you a heads up. I've been heavily involved in water work.
Uh-huh.
And the bottom line on it all is we don't have a lot of water to grow on.
Right.
There's two different hydrologists, two different science groups, if you will, that have been working on it. And one says we don't have any, as best they can tell, and the other says, well, we have some, but not much. So I would encourage, and it's not a threat, not at all.
No. Yeah, I understand.
For subsequent developments and so forth, there's going to be a lot of efforts to conserve, particularly when you guys are up there in the prairie.
That's
out there,
right,
so.
yeah. And our intent, actually, all of our irrigation is meant to be just temporary, so everything gets established and meant to go away.
Good luck. Okay, well, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you.
I have one correction.
Okay.
So the Planning Commission's motion was actually unanimous that they forwarded to you. I was thinking of something different. And the other thing is if and when you get ready to make a motion, we would ask that you include the approval of the subdivision improvements agreement as well as the MPD and the final plat.
So is that in the?
It's a slight modification to what is in the proposed motion. So when we get to that, if there is a proposed motion, just add that you're moving to approve the final MPD, the final plat, and the subdivision improvement agreement. So we just need to add that subdivision improvement agreement language in any proposed motion.
Which is actually part of the subdivision, the final plat.
Well, I would entertain a motion.
I actually have a question and I don't know if it's for you or the attorney or Chuck or the combination of you, and that is, so over the years, we've all discussed water a lot, and one of the questions I was never clear on the answer of was, God forbid, but if the water system does get contaminated, whose responsibility is it? And this is just kind of a question I feel like, as the city has annexed
Chuck.
it, yeah.
I think it's us.
It's our system, so it would be us.
Dedicated to us.
Mhm.
Do you mean the spring water protection zone, or do you mean the actual water itself?
Oh.
The spring water protection zone?
Yeah.
Yeah, so if it were contaminated, we would look for the source of the contaminator, and then the source of the contaminator would be responsible for cleanup, would be our first position.
Okay.
If that answers your question.
Yeah, thanks. It was one I was never clear on the answer of.
Ronnie, can I add one thing?
Yeah.
The drinking water source protection plan that our
Can you
group-
speak into the
Oh, sorry.
microphone? I'm so
The
sorry.
drinking water source protection plan, and I should have mentioned this in our presentation, because it's actually the backbone of everything. And I know it's been a really critical piece to a lot of people in the community, including us. And so when we worked really hard with the city to develop that. So our program, in designing this, that document's a living document that starts at design of the project. It's got sections for construction and then ownership long-term. And it's got mechanisms to update it. So right now, any of our designers, whether it's architects, engineers, all of our contractors, it's an exhibit to every one of their contracts, and they're required to follow it. And then it's also incorporated in the CC&Rs.
Okay. And I guess my last comment is going to be, we only got 2 of the attachments for the packet last night, and so that was like 120 pages, and so I don't know what my colleagues want to do. I personally, because it came to us so late, and it was technically part of the public hearing, when some people might have already reviewed things. I would prefer to have another 2 weeks to look things over, but I may be the only one who feels that way.
We've received that information before, most of it, but nonetheless, our Civic Plus program, for some reason, doesn't like to upload big files, and we don't know it really until it happens. And more than 24 hours ago, we redid the agenda, so technically, from a legal standpoint, you're fine, but certainly from a policy standpoint, that's for you to decide.
Well, let me ask other council members if they have the same concern about the late received attachments.
So,
and ultimately, do you think that it would have changed either the public hearing or your decision tonight?
I'll let the others go first. I have a slightly complicated answer.
Every day I have been on council, every single day, Lion's Back has been in front of us. I slogged through the 280 pages, and I am ready to vote on this. 2 more weeks is not going to change my mind. I don't think anybody else would have showed up to the public hearing. It's time to move forward on this, and 2 weeks is not going to it's not going to change my mind.
Mike, you?
The subject is the review of the drinking water, the source protection zone.
No, Mike.
Do you want to answer them? I'm sorry.
Okay. There are 2 items that are identified in the agenda summary for the public hearing and for our vote, because we're being asked to vote on the final master plan development and the final plat and the subdivision improvement agreement. And
I got that.
And the two attachments that weren't in our packet were the final master plan development and phase 1 plans. So that's what we're being asked to vote on, and the development and phasing agreement from 2009. So the packet that posted on Friday was 224 pages, but the packet went up to 347 pages last night. So I don't know if you read all that, but it was the portion that had to do with the final master plan development, which is what we're voting on.
I would prefer to move on unless it's something really significant, but whatever you guys want to do.
Feels like,
I'll go ahead and speak to this. So I did go ahead and look in the Planning Commission packet for some of the missing information. So I feel like it wasn't necessarily not available to us, but then if the concern is that the public wouldn't be able to find it, then I can see that. But I'm not sure that it would influence the outcome that much. We have been talking about this for years, and I am impressed by the thoughtfulness that have gone into the project and design. So I think ultimately it is the direction that we want to go with future lodging. I do have a little bit of a concern about, so this is a separate reason to go slightly slow, and that is that real estate transfer assessment is part of the pre-annexation agreement, and for the last few years, what I have heard is that state code has precluded that, and in recently reviewing the state code, it appears that the state code differentiates between 2 kinds of RETA, a transfer fee covenant and a reinvestment fee covenant. The former is disallowed, the latter is allowed, and I've just recently brought this to staff's attention, including Lori's, and the RETA was intended to support affordable housing, and this is also a topic that we've talked about a lot over our time on council, and I appreciate that consideration may be given to what the actual needs are of the lodging and possibly increasing the affordable housing, but the RETA was something tangible to that effect, and I feel like it's important that we have as much tangible provisions for workforce housing as possible. So I would appreciate the time for staff to analyze my thoughts on this.
I can address it from a non-legal standpoint. So it was discussed in the pre-annexation agreement. Everybody thought it was an interesting idea. We've tried to fight this fight in Park City too, and got told we couldn't do it. So I think that between the time that the pre-annexation agreement was approved and the phase development and phasing was approved, the decision was made to, rather than have the RETA, to actually designate where and actually designate a certain number of units in the development and phasing agreement. And so that's what's stated there. The development and phasing agreement also says that we can't ask for any more than anything more, really, in terms of improvements and public improvements of the developer. So just from it was a difference between years and actually finding out in reality what that meant. They use it in Colorado, but they have the ability to do it. Certainly there could be a private covenant, and I think that's up to the developer. Whether or not we can require that is a legal question.
And wasn't there a $20,000, I kind of remember, there was a $20,000 gift to the city that came from the Lions Back group, and we used it to pave a bike path by Cinema Court. Do you mind?
No. I'm Michael.
Well, hold on, come on up and microphone and welcome.
I'm Michael Badger. When I bought the Gonzo Inn, we condominiumized the residential units, and out of that we collected a 1% fee on every sale, and half of that went to fund the Homeowners Association Reserve Fund. A 0.5% was given to the city, and it was earmarked essentially for affordable housing. I don't know how that was spent, but that's a donation that we.
Was it in the amount of $20,000?
It was
roughly.
Roughly, yes, I'd say about 20,000.
From what I can recall, it was spent on the bike path by.
It well could have been. I don't know. I didn't track it.
Yeah, it was part of the. It was
right,
like
but it was
a gift to Cinema Court
right,
development. Yeah.
Exactly, but that was associated with the Gonzo Inn, not Lions Back.
Got it. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
So I wanted to try and address Kaylin's question on the legal issue. I was not aware of the history that from the pre-annexation agreement to the developing and phasing agreement, that the provision of number of units was the sort of acquiescence regarding the RETA. So I would say that if the reason there's a difference between the two agreements, and one mentioned the RETA, but the second mentioned the number of units, that perhaps the intent of the first agreement was memorialized in the second agreement by way of the number of units. So that I don't know if that completely answers your question, but I think your question was sort of more of ours is a contract interpretation and contract history, where yours is more of a legal interpretation of, can we still do this? And the answer to the contract interpretation might help more than the legal analysis. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And when this, I was aware that this was moving through the process, but I gave Planning Commission and staff time. But when it did show up in our packet, I applied the workforce housing formulas that we have developed, like while this process was going along, and to which other lodging developments, including townhouse and condo and commercial zones, are subject. And it appears that the 18 units are about half of what we would require of, or what our inclusionary zoning study indicated was justifiable. So just a little concern about that in terms of what's being delivered in terms of affordable housing.
Right, and just a point,
And I realize that we can't ask it, that we're contractually obligated to whatever's
correct.
come
And the
about.
Assured Workforce Housing Ordinance was passed after this.
Yes.
This application was vested, but it is something for perhaps the developer to take into consideration when they get to the building of the housing.
Yes.
Hotel.
Well, yes, you indicated it might come at a different phase than the hotel, so that's why I said the affordable housing.
Actually, the opposite. I indicated that it's approved in, the affordable housing is approved in the 5th phase.
Right.
And so what I was saying is that we actually might move it up
Right.
with the hotel.
Right. I think you and I were
Okay.
on the same page, but maybe saying different things, yeah.
Okay.
So Kaylin, what are you hoping to accomplish with the comments? Just to be clear.
Well, I guess I was hoping that maybe there was a little bit more of an edge for the city to negotiate more for more housing and sooner, because townhouses and condos that are allowed to be used for lodging are functionally lodging, as they are priced as such and used as such to a large extent, and will generate workforce housing demand. So
I just had a thought though, SITLA parcels tend to be exempt from a lot of things. Is there an exemption from the application of the WAHU for a development that's on a SITLA parcel?
Well, it's vested under the old entitlements.
So the WAHU doesn't apply because it's been prior investment.
yes, regardless of SITLA or not, I believe.
Correct.
Okay.
Right, at point in time, so the ordinance occurred after this application was vested, so we can't
apply the
retroactively apply it, no. When an applicant has a completed application, once that application, our planning department determines that it's complete, they're entitled to our ordinances and laws at the time that is vested. So if we later changed it like we did with the Assured Workforce Housing, we can't retroactively apply it. So this project was vested before our Assured Workforce Housing ordinance.
Okay, so.
Okay, that's sufficient. I'm ready to move on.
Okay. We do not have a motion yet on the table, but I'd be happy to entertain a motion, but if so, then I'll excuse our guest.
Yeah, I'm going to pass on this one because I wasn't around when all this started, and I don't think I should.
Make the motion, okay.
Everybody was.
Michael.
I'm willing.
I wish there was a moment where I could be like, I was still in high school, but.
I'm willing to
Make a motion?
make a motion,
Thank
except
you.
that it sounds like staff wanted some specific verbiage, which I don't believe I have.
Thank you for presenting. You can go ahead and, thank you.
Yeah, subdivision
Thanks.
improvement agreement.
So when, I'm going to pull up the proposed motion. When you make your motion, you're going to move to approve the final MPD and the final plat, comma, and for phase one, correct? For phase one, thank you, comma, and the subdivision improvement agreement for phase one. So in the motion, just add, and the subdivision improvement agreement for phase one.
Okay. I move to approve the City of Moab Resolution Number 13-2021A, resolution approving the Lions Back Resort MPD Phase 1 final plat and Phase 1
Subdivision improvement
agreement.
I'll second. Thank you, Tani. Any further deliberation? Karen, are you with us?
I'm here.
Okay, seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Nay. And with apologies to the developer, but this is a process thing, and I don't do well with public hearings where all the materials weren't there for the public to review, or I don't feel like I had ample time with them. So that is the nature of my vote.
So motion passes 4-0.
For
4-1.
One, sorry. Why do I always do that? 4-1. And we're moving on. 10-2, proposed resolution 16, 2021, a resolution extending the time for use of water impact fees. Is there a motion?
I'd like an explanation a little bit from staff first, because I think I understand this, but maybe just a wee recap to explain. Yeah, because I don't think we've done this before.
So no one's ready to make a motion on this agenda item?
I can. I move to adopt Resolution 16-2021, extending the time for use of water impact fees.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I will second.
Thank you, Mike. Discussion with staff.
So Carly, you don't run afoul of any kind of state statute by extending this? Or?
So we can extend it, but we need to pass this resolution in order to explain like what we're going to be spending the money on and when we plan to spend it. So this is in an effort not to run afoul of state statute and still be able to spend the money.
Okay.
Yep, and the intent is to pay a portion of the water bond we took out this year.
Ronnie?
Was that the explanation, discussion that was helpful? Yeah, we just have to, do this in order to be able to spend that money. So that's the purpose of this resolution.
Any other discussion? Okay, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion passes 5-0. 10-3, appointment of the city's representative to Grand County's Boundary Commission. Carly?
Yes, so the county has a boundary commission and we need an elected representative to be appointed to it, and the recommendation is that the mayor serve.
Is there a motion?
I will move to approve to appoint the mayor to the Grand County Boundary Commission.
Thank you, Tawny. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ronnie. Discussion?
Does anyone remember, have we never had anyone on this? I mean, I guess it's just to meet every year, or?
It was
Yeah.
pointed out to us
Yeah.
that we needed to have somebody.
Yeah.
Okay.
Who
We had
pointed it out?
It was city manager at the time, but
Okay.
that doesn't comport with state statute requirements.
Right,
So
it's
we had to
always been
adjust
city
that.
manager,
Yeah.
but it needed to be an elected.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Rather than designating an individual, we thought, well, mayor is a role
Yeah.
as an elected, and that would be the easiest, since it may or may not ever meet. And if it did, it would be 15 minutes, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that we have had any, do we even know, have we had any of these review, protests regarding annexations? I don't think so,
You guys would know
right?
better. I don't
Yeah.
know. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Motion passes 5-0, and approval of the bills.
I move to pay the bills against the city of Moab in the amount of $221,307.50.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Kaylin.
So second?
Thank you, Mike. All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Good work tonight, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
And it's 10:05.